Chapter 591, Violent Night Battle. The few remaining survivors reacted quickly. With a loud roar, they raised up their blades and pounced towards Ling Tian with a crazed madness. Ling Tian's gaze swept past these survivors and realized that all of them had martial arts no weaker than his blood-iron warriors. With a hearty laugh, he raised his sword to receive their attacks. Right at the moment when Ling Tian charged forward, Li Zu's aim and sword as one splinter flashed past Ling Tian's body and landed right behind Ling Tian, panting heavily with her face pale. Li Zu's inner chi was naturally far purer than others, but when compared to Ling Tian she was still lacking. After such a long period of exhaustion, especially with her opponents not being weak, she would naturally exhaust a large amount of inner chi. Even with Ling Tian's profound cultivation, he was also nearing his limits, not to mention the slightly inferior Li Zu. Even though she was protected by her aim and sword as one, such a level of exhaustion was something which she could not endure. If not for the fact that she held the treasured black iron sword in her hands, she might not have been able to fight until the very end. Ling Tian swept his sword out and the few remaining survivors who had just pounced forward were already reduced into a puddle of blood. Li Zu shut her eyes in meditation and was well guarded by Ling Tian. With the two of them killing two paths of blood out, the 500 above heavens experts had immediately lost 200 of their comrades. There wasn't a single individual who was only injured. Being victims of Ling Tian and Li Zu's man and sword as one, there wouldn't be any casualties but only fatalities. Furthermore, they would all die without a complete corpse. The remaining men gathered together with rage all over their faces. They glared at the man and woman before them, hating the fact that they could not swallow the two individuals before them alive. "You are Ling Tian?" A white-robed elder clenched his teeth and glared at Ling Tian with viciousness. "It is this young noble indeed." Ling Tian let out a carefree laugh and replied politely, "All of you have traveled a long distance before arriving at Sky Bearing. Ling Tian is here to act as a good host." "Act as a good host?" a burly man cursed. "This daddy will FK your ancestors." "What a bullshit host. You DB street road who deserves to be sliced into 1,000 pieces." Ling Tian's eyes turned cold and he sneered, "You guys indeed live up to having 1,000 years of history. The only thing you guys inherited is a mouthful of curses." "Not bad indeed." The burly man's face turned purple and he sneered in response, "Ling Tian, you're only a profligate young noble from some third-grade family and you actually dare to spout such words of arrogance? Apart from ambushing us from behind, what other abilities do you guys have?" Ling Tian did not get angry but smiled instead. "This young noble is no longer a profligate brat anymore and the world will naturally have its assessment of me. On the contrary, there will always be some with an inflated ego indulging in their glory from 1,000 years ago. I wonder who is the foolishly conceited frog in the well." "I believe that the world will also have its assessment about that." Just when that burly man wanted to retort, the white-robed man beside him scolded, "Shut up, back down now." The above heavens troops quickly split themselves into 5 groups with an elder leading each group glaring at Ling Tian with hatred in their eyes. Tens of torches were lit up at the same time. Li Zu was right behind Ling Tian, seated cross-legged without a single care in the world. She was silently circulating her inner chi to quickly replenish her exhaustion as though the remaining 300 enemies did not exist. Despite all of them being filled with the urge to tear the man and woman before their eyes into shreds, not a single one of them dared to make a move. The situation was extremely tense and on the verge of exploding at any moment. Ling Tian looked at the 5 leaders coldly and said with an amiable voice, "What's the matter? There are actually 5 leaders? Ha ha, with only 300 men left, are so many leaders useful? In case you guys end up fighting for merits because you guys aren't split up nicely, let me give all of you a hand." I believe that as long as another 2 to 3 of you are gone, there wouldn't be any more arguments. All of their faces changed and a bearded old man took a step forward. "Ling Tian, you are also someone with status. Do you only know how to wag your tongue before a battle?" Ling Tian burst out laughing. "Should I not wag my tongue? When I was swinging around my blade just now, Where were the 5 of you hiding at? Only after I killed 2 bloodbaths out and slaughtered about 200 of your subordinates did you guys appear without a single injury. You guys truly have extremely profound martial arts. I am truly in admiration of such martially skilled leaders." The 5 elders in the lead flushed completely red, with the 2 invincible sword lights charging at them like a speeding train. Just brushing past the sword lights would mean their definite doom. So what if their cultivations were profound? That sword light was the epitome of sword arts, the state of man and sword as one. Thus, all of them fled as quickly as they could with the fastest movement technique that they could muster. Now that Ling Tian had openly criticized them for their fear of death, be it whether or not they were forced by circumstances, they felt extremely embarrassed. The bearded elder in the middle roared, "Ling Tian, regardless of whether or not both are families or enemies, you should come at us in the open. How is ambushing us in such a despicable manner the actions of a hero? Aren't you afraid of tarnishing your name?" Ling Tian's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "The old man is the vice sect head of Above Heavens, Ming Ling." The bearded elder glared at Ling Tian and said proudly, "We are martial artists from the pugilistic world and our grudges should be settled by the rules of the pugilistic world." "Ling Tian, you are the direct descendant of a great family on the continent. Aren't you afraid of becoming a laughingstock in the world by ambushing us in such a manner?" Ling Tian sneered, "You are indeed someone from a 1,000-year-old sect. Even without a reason, you are actually able to quibble with the facts. Didn't the lot of you just say that my Ling family is a third-rate family and that I am a profligate brat? Why are you talking about the rules of the pugilistic world now? You really don't know what shame is. Furthermore, we are currently fighting for the hegemony of the world. What is the point of talking about the rules of the pugilistic world? What a joke! What kind of grudges do I have with your Above Heavens? Ridiculous!" The bearded man roared in exasperation. "So you think that you can massacre the innocent with the excuse of fighting for hegemony in the world? The winner is king while the losers will become thieves. This logic holds true from the ancient times until now." Ling Tian smiled with mockery. "Massacring the innocent? Are any of you innocent? What a joke! If I allow all of you to enter skybearing, what will all of you do? At that time, the ones to be massacred will probably be the citizens of my skybearing empire. Deem it. Only you guys are allowed to do evil but you can't accept it when others kill you? Old man, you already have a full beard and should be 60 at the very least, right? Have you lived all of those years for nothing? Is this the bearing of a 1,000-year-old sect?" The bearded man was angered to the point his body was trembling all over. With his breathing heavy, he glared at Ling Tian with a deathly expression and enunciated word by word slowly, "Good, good, good. If that's the case, then don't blame this old man for being vicious." He then took a step back and roared, "Everyone from my Above Heavens is to go all out to kill even at the cost of your lives. Tear this little B Street road into shreds and take revenge for our brothers." "Revenge, revenge!" The 300 burly men roared in unison and their eyes had all flushed red. The only reason why the bearded elder would drag the matter on for so long was so that his terrified subordinates could regain their cool and unleash their strongest battle force. Now that his objective had been met, even if Ling Tian didn't provoke him, he would never let Ling Tian go. Just like what Ling Tian had said, their objective for traveling to skybearing was to take revenge. If they were to really enter skybearing, the things that they would do would definitely be far worse than Ling Tian. With Ling Tian's wisdom, how could he not tell what the bearded man was planning? However, if the bearded man wanted to stall for time, Ling Tian was extremely happy to play along with him. After all, Li Zhu had also exhausted a great deal of energy previously and had yet to fully recover. If the other party charged forward without considering the consequences, then it would truly be troublesome for Ling Tian. Besides that, he had also agreed to meet up with Ling Jian here and the appointed time was past but Ling Jian was not here yet. There might have been some changes and so Ling Tian needed to delay some time for both Ling Jian and Li Zhu. Behind him, Li Zhu gradually stood up and looked at the 300 warriors in front of her as though they were 300 corpses. She was not injured at all but had only overly exhausted her inner chi. After circulating her inner chi, she had mostly recovered already. While she wouldn't be able to unleash her A-man and sword as one again, An ordinary fight wouldn't pose a problem for her. Gil, a well-built knight, waved his spear and led 50 to 60 men to charge at Ling Tian. The moment he charged forward, a chain reaction was ignited and the others rushed forward to surround the two of them as well. You go left and I go right, go all out to kill. There isn't a need to show any mercy, Ling Tian instructed in a low voice. Li Zu nodded her head and her figure drifted out while unleashing her divine ice formula at full force. The surrounding 100 feet around Li Zu was immediately assaulted by a bone-piercing chill. With a sudden change of temperature, a large fog spread out from with Li Zu at the center. Aha, broken bar. Just when both parties were prepared to take action, miserable groans were heard one after another. Three figures like dragons split up into three different directions while unleashing a massacre. A boorish voice could then be heard laughing. Ha ha, I can finally kill to my heart's content. Ling Tian and the white-robed scholar held on to a gleaming sword each, and following closely behind them were two rows of men collapsing on the ground. People from beyond heavens? The bearded elder was angry to the point that his nose was crooked. He never expected that when facing the two ureshis before them, they would actually be stabbed in the back by their 1,000-year-old enemies. Third junior brother, fourth junior brother, and ninth junior brother, quickly take men to block the three of them. Kill them without mercy. Don't let them break our formation. The three leaders acknowledged those orders and their figures shot out like shooting stars. Kill without mercy? Meng Lingzhou, after not seeing you for 20 over years, your martial arts haven't improved by much, but your ego has truly been inflated greatly. The white-robed scholar replied without a tinge of anger in his voice, and a bloody flower was created with a single stab of his sword. With just all of you? You must be dreaming. This old man is only here to warm my body up. Byzanting, you old fogey. The bearded man cursed in anger. Byzanting? What a good name. Ling Tian almost burst out laughing. No wonder he wasn't willing to mention his own name. I see. Hearing Ling Tian's muttering to himself, Li Zu was curious. With a bright sword light, she landed beside him and asked, "What do you mean by that?" Byzanting Iha broken bar, Ling Tian said with a mischievous smile. White, Bei, real, Zen, and straight, Ting. He. His name truly makes my blood boil. Pervert, Li Zu exclaimed before charging out again with her face completely flushed red. This time, she did not turn around again as she cursed. All men in the world only know how to think with the lower half of their body. A pretty majestic name had been completely twisted to become a dirty novel. Byzanting a broken bar, pervert a broken bar. Ling Tian had a weird smile on his face as he muttered, "It is truly a match made in heavens." More than 10 burly men charged to Ling Tian's side and were completely puzzled. It wouldn't be much if this brat didn't bother avoiding them at all, but why did he have such a weird smile on his face? Ling Tian finally snapped out of his daze and sped forward with his heaven splitter. Two of the burly men felt the weight in their hands lighten and their blades were reduced to scrap metal. They then felt a tinge of cold in their necks and their heads were lopped off. As for Ling Tian, he was already unleashing a massacre behind the two of them. A white figure flashed past and Meng Lingzhou landed in front of Ling Tian with 7 to 8 sword shadows smashing down on him. Ling Tian did not even attempt to avoid the sword and welcomed it with his sword. With a loud clang, Ling Tian's figure shook and he took half a step back. At the same time, he waved his sword and sliced off the two front legs of a horse. Stabbing out, he then killed the knight who was on the horse. Meng Lingzhou was shaken by the shock of the clash and he made a somersault in midair before stabbing down with a brilliant splendor. From the sword strike which he exchanged with Meng Lingzhou, Ling Tian knew that the sword in the hands of this old man wasn't an ordinary item. Furthermore, with the profound inner chi of Meng Lingzhou, it was very likely that Meng Lingzhou would be able to exchange a few blows with him. It wouldn't be anything if this was during an ordinary period. But with Ling Tian facing enemies from all directions and him being the strongest fighter on his side, if he were to be tangled up with Meng Lingzhou, it wouldn't be good for the overall situation. His body shrunk back slightly and he dodged to the right before weaving back into the ranks of the enemy. One after another, the horses collapsed onto the ground and Ling Tian's figure would never stop. He would go to the left sometimes and the right sometimes. He would advance and retreat without any fixed rhythm and would target the places where the number of enemies would be the most. Every time his figure weaved through the ranks of the enemies, a couple of lives would be wiped out. Meng Linzhao let out a series of roars and followed closely behind Ling Tian, but he would always be a short distance away from Ling Tian. In a fit of rage, he could only let out a series of furious roars of desperation. However, Ling Tian could not be bothered about Meng Linzhao at all, and since he was surrounded by enemies all around, he would just kill to his heart's content. However, Meng Linzhao could not do that. Everyone around him was either the disciple of his sect or his loyal subordinates. How could he possibly go all out like Ling Tian without any restraint? As such, the many experts of above heavens had become the greatest obstruction to Meng Linzhao's speed. In fact, this was also Ling Tian's objective. Not only would he be able to tangle with the strongest fighter of his enemy to weaken the pressure on his side, he would also be able to frustrate his enemy. If not, how would it be possible for Meng Linzhao to even follow after Ling Tian with Ling Tian's speed? On the other side, Li Zhu was already completely surrounded in fog and the temperature surrounding her was still declining rapidly. Yi Qingchen, who was originally opposite Li Zhu, had already changed directions and joined forces with a white-robed scholar, Bei Zhenting. Yi Qingchen was no fool. After Li Zhu unleashed her white fog, the whole region had turned into her personal domain. Regardless of how high his martial arts was, he would be blinded after entering the fog. Yi Qingchen wasn't willing to go in and blind himself, even if he was a fortune teller. In the thick fog, miserable groans sounded one after another without a single pause in between them. It could be seen just how quickly the people inside were being massacred. Yi Qingchen, who could clearly hear what was going on inside, was covered all over with goosebumps. Who would have imagined that the frail and delicate-looking lady beside Ling Tian would actually be such a vicious character who was completely numb to killing? Yi Qingchen asked himself, even if he was facing a herd of pigs, would he be able to kill as swiftly as the last before him? Furthermore, she was killing a bunch of above heavens experts. He then looked over at Ling Tian and muttered to himself, birds of a feather flock together indeed. Ling Tian is indeed a perverse individual who would find someone like her to be his wife. As for the woodcutter, he held a shiny axe in his hands which was the size of half a door. The moment he swung his axe, he was like a many thousand-bladed chariot. He went left and right and roared out loudly with the intoxication of battle. Of the three beyond heavens individuals, he was the one with the most powerful killing force. Although he couldn't be compared to Ling Tian or Li Zhu, the number of those who perished under his hands was also a respectable figure. At this moment, there were at least 30 who had died in his hands. From far off, a black-robed figure sped forward like a speeding arrow. As this speeding figure heard the battle coming from afar, his figure sped up even further and his calm appearance gradually became laced with a cold killing intent. The sword by his waist also let out a shrill sound that was filled with dense killing intent. It was as though his sword had a spirit of its own and wanted to join in the massacre. Ling Tian burst out into laughter and began teasing Meng Linzhao to provoke him. At the same time, his movement techniques were filled with endless variation. Whenever Meng Linzhao was about to catch up to him, he would suddenly dodge to the side. With one chasing and another escaping, countless individuals died under Ling Tian's sword. Ling Tian, stop for this old man if you are a man. This old man will have a one-on-one battle to the death with you. Meng Linzhao was angered to the point his innards were on fire. His original bearing and elegance had completely disappeared as his teeth were clenched and his eyes were bloodshot. The other party was leading him in a cat-and-mouse chase, but he was always a step behind. At the same time, he had to watch as his sect disciples were killed under Ling Tian's hands and turned into cold corpses. Such a feeling was definitely a horrible one. Forget it, old man. I am facing 300 of you alone, but you still cannot gain the upper hand. You still want to fight me one-on-one? Did you take the wrong medicine today? As for whether or not I am a man, do you think you can make the final decision? Do you think that you are a peerless beauty? Ling Tian retorted, and his figure flashed past 5 feet in front of Meng Linzhao, sending out a palm strike. He crushed ahead like it was a watermelon. The moment blood sprayed out in all directions, Ling Tian had even arrogantly shaken his ass in Meng Lingzhao's direction. "Ling Tian, you despicable coward, you be street road." Meng Lingzhao was angered to the point he puked blood and his eyes almost fell out from their sockets. "Come at this daddy if you have the guts. You only know how to attack the weak or younger generation. You a broken bar, can you even be considered to be the ruler of a region?" Ling Tian happily waved his sword before turning behind to look at Meng Lingzhao. "Younger generation? Old man, you better be clear about something. All of them seem to be at least 10 to 20 years older than me. This young noble has to face them alone, and this young noble is now the one bullying the younger generation." The words of someone from the 1,000-year-old above heavens is interesting indeed. "No wonder you are able to live until you have a full beard on your face. You are truly an optimistic fellow who likes to joke. With you always being in such a good mood, it would be difficult for you to not lead a long life." Ling Tian had a look of admiration as he said to Meng Lingzhao while blinking his eyes, "Do you agree, old fogey? However, it wouldn't be good for you to live for too long either. What a waste of food. This young noble shall do some good and send you back to your old home." As he said that, he laughed out loud and his figure darted away, dodging the dozen of palm strikes that Meng Lingzhao had just sent out. Meng Lingzhao's face flushed red, and with a loud shout, his figure shot up to the sky. Spinning around in the air, a brilliant ball of sword light was formed. With a lagging trail of sword light behind him, Meng Lingzhao charged forward at Ling Tian with an unstoppable momentum. "What the FK? Man and sword as one? You also know how to do that?" Ling Tian's words angered Meng Lingzhao to the point he almost fell from the air. "What does it mean by you also know how to do that? Should I not know? Could it be that you are the only one in the world who is allowed to know man and sword as one? Oh my goodness!" Ling Tian stuck out his tongue and sped up even further. He charged forward in an S-shaped pattern, and with every step that he took he would hide behind an above heavens disciple. He would then use his hands to push them, his shoulders to shove them, or nudge them with his ass, sending all the above heavens disciples flying into the incoming sword light like a moth flying into the flame of a candle. Meng Lingzhao, who was in the sword light, clenched his teeth, and regardless of the number of above heavens who were reduced to mincemeat when they crashed into his sword light, he wasn't willing to stop. He knew that Ling Tian wanted to make use of such a method to exhaust him or make him stop his attack. However, he had already steeled his heart. With the large exhaustion of the A-man and sword as one skill, Meng Lingzhao would only be able to unleash it once. If he were to unleash it a second time, he would end up like a lamp out of fuel and would die on the spot. Thus, even at the expense of his sect disciples' injuries, he would take Ling Tian down with this strike of his. At this moment, Meng Lingzhao hated Ling Tian to the bones. He would never rest until he had killed Ling Tian. However, this little brat was like a slippery eel. Despite having unparalleled martial arts, Ling Tian would only avoid the battle and set his sights on his disciples. This was unforgivable. Ling Tian's speed was obviously only a little bit faster than his, but even after he unleashed his man and sword as one and had his speed doubled, he was still slightly slower than Ling Tian. How was this possible? He didn't know that Ling Tian had not unleashed his full speed but had purposely played him like a fool. A broken bar. Meng Lingzhao, Sect Master Meng, truly has divine martial arts. You are able to kill your own disciples as though you are dicing up vegetables. Ling Tian is truly filled with admiration. It turns out that the sword of above heavens is trained with the blood of their own sect members. It is a 1,000-year wonder indeed. Ha 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 ha. Ling Tian's loud laughter could be heard, and he sent out another 3 kicks to send 3 disciples towards Meng Lingzhao. As everyone in the battle heard Ling Tian's maniacal laughter, they all turned around to take a look, only to see 3 above heavens experts being reduced to mush under Meng Lingzhao's sword light. Chapter 592, Changes in the Courtyard. Not just Yi Qingchen, but even the white-robed scholar stared in amazement. They had no idea what was wrong with this above heavens vice sect head. As for the bearded woodcutter, he burst out laughing immediately, saying, "Ming Ling Zhao, this old man seems to have suffered from a cultivation deviation, a broken bar. Vice sect head, a broken bar. Second senior brother, a broken bar." The few leaders from the above heavens all exclaimed loudly at once. One of them even showed traces of anger in his eyes. They did not understand the underlying reason behind what happened, but no matter what it was, they could not just perform fratricide while in the middle of a war with their enemies, right? What difference would that be from directly betraying the sect? Ming Ling Zhao was embarrassed and furious, but his inner energy was already close to running out. He furiously bellowed, "Ling Tian, I won't rest until one of us dies." He pulled upon the dredges of his energies, and the originally scattered sword lights suddenly congealed to the point that they looked nearly corporeal, flying towards Ling Tian to cut him down. "This young noble has no time," Ling Tian snorted in disdain. "You're also not my child, so I have no need to accompany you to play." His figure twisted, and left behind 4 or 5 twisted shadows, colliding towards the troops of above heavens. The heaven splitter flashed, and as it spun in a circle, a few of the disciples that were slower fell to the ground as they screamed. Ming Ling Zhao clenched his teeth and finally controlled his sword lights to turn back again, rushing towards Ling Tian. His white beard was already speckled with droplets of blood. After forcing himself to integrate sword and body as one twice, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. To add on force to increase its speed, his internal energy became overstimulated, causing himself some serious internal injuries. Right now, he only wanted to use the threatening strength given by his A-man and sword as one to kill Ling Tian or at least seriously injure him. In addition, his hate towards Ling Tian had already reached an extreme, and if he could trade his life to deal some damage to Ling Tian, he would do it without any hesitation. A bone-biting cold-killing intent suddenly pervaded the entire battlefield. "Vice sect head, be careful." "Second senior brother, careful. Stop him." A few of the disciples threw themselves over with expressions of urgency and panic, disregarding their lives. Ming Ling Zhao turned a deaf ear to all this, and he did not even care what was happening around him. His eyes were already bloodshot with the image of Ling Tian's mocking smile the only thing reflected in his eyes and mind. He had only hate in his heart, and he only wished to kill that irritating kid. A pity, reality sometimes was just this cruel. Because he broken bar, he suddenly felt a chill pass through his neck, and saw himself suddenly flying up. As his eyes looked down, he witnessed a headless body with blood spouting from the severed neck, with its 2 hands gleaming with the light from the realm of sword and body as one as it rushed forward. It was definitely of the realm, despite the sword light already beginning to scatter. How could a headless person activate this level of skill? Wait a minute, a broken bar, that corpse, why does it resemble me so much? A broken bar. Ming Ling Zhao's eyes suddenly opened up wide, full of incredulity. But his thoughts had ground to a halt at this point. The above heavens vice sect head, Ming Ling Zhao, had died. Everyone could clearly see that just as Ming Ling Zhao thrust out with his sword, a black shadow suddenly appeared from nowhere, arcing across the battlefield in an instant and appearing behind Ming Ling Zhao. After that, a wave of the shadow's hand cleanly separated the former's head from his neck. This clean and straightforward method of killing someone made everyone stall a little in their actions. This was because the person assassinated was the number 2 figure of the above heavens sect, Ming Ling Zhao. And furthermore, Ming Ling Zhao could not do anything other than to allow his head to be lopped off. Even if he could not retaliate, even if he was caught unprepared, how could his head be so easily taken off? Assassin. This person was definitely a peerless assassin. This was definitely someone who lived for the Tao of killing. The person in question shot forward rapidly, only revealing a blurred shadow of himself as it passed through the above heavens crowd. It only halted when it came in front of Ling Tian. At this time, everyone saw that the shadow was actually a youth garbed in black robes, cold expression, his eyes scanning the battlefield like arcs of lightning. His face was handsome, but he exuded a fearsome killing intent, the sword in his hands still dripping blood. Ling Tian had arrived. Using his stored expansive sword energy, Ling Tian had rushed to the back of Ming Ling Zhao, and under the circumstance where the latter was an arrow at the end of its flight, This great vice sect head was actually assassinated in one hit. Who would have thought that he would die such a miserable death, to the point of not even being able to see his killer before he died? You're late. Ling Tian looked at Ling Tian, a look of praise flashing across his eyes. He naturally could see the breakthrough Ling Tian had with his martial skills. Yes, young noble. Ling Tian nodded, before continuing in a hurried and low voice, young noble, we need to finish this battle fast. I've just received news from the Crystal Pavilion that the #1 aristocratic family in the Moon Deity Empire, the Lei family, has secretly infiltrated Skybearing Empire. The exact number and names are unknown, but definitely above 1,000 in number. Their objective currently remains unclear. How long has it been since you received the news? Ling Tian jumped in shock. When I received the news, it was around 8 hours ago. Ling Tian's face now showed a sense of anxiety. The Ling family courtyard is in danger. Last Chen is also in danger. A cold gleam shot through Ling Tian's eyes, and he no longer hesitated, suddenly howling out into the air, use all your strength to kill, leave no one alive. Quickly clean up this group of trash and return to Skybearing. To leave behind even some would mean allowing a tumor to fester. This would bring unnecessary trouble. Thus Ling Tian chose to wipe them all out. Yes. Just as his voice sounded in the ears of everyone present, Ling Tian had already thrown himself into the battle, the black iron sword in hand hacking down like a torrential downpour. As his figure flew forward, the disciples of the above heavens gurgled in their throats before falling to the ground. All of them sported a thin red line around the necks, the trademark skill of Ling Tian. Ling Tian did not hesitate or conserve his power, going all out at the start. Under his anxiousness, he did not bother to hide his skills as the #1 famed killer. He moved like a warship traveling unhindered through the seas, only leaving behind rolling waves of blood. A blast of cold came into existence, as Li Zu rushed in amid a wave of white frost. With her fist on the left and her sword on the right, she threw herself into another direction of above heaven disciples. Every time her sword flashed, at least one life would be reaped, and every time her fist landed, someone would drop to the ground, frozen stiff. Within the icy fog, everyone was in disorder. The ground was littered with bodies. None of them fated to walk back out alive. Ling Tian's movement skill accelerated to his peak within an instant, and at his maximum speed, the 3 burly men who were barricading his way turned into 6 chunks of flesh. With a shout, he had already appeared and blocked the way of the 2 leaders of above heavens, and his sword thrust out over 100 times in a few moments, akin to raindrops falling on them. The 2 leaders received a huge shock and immediately resisted while retreating in a haggard manner. Ling Tian's movement technique had reached such speeds that it was impossible to imagine that a mortal body could achieve it. He suddenly slipped past them, and with a sweep of his sword, 2 other disciples lost their lives. Ling Tian flipped himself up, using the heads of the disciples in front of him as stepping stones as he proceeded onward, rupturing their heads in the process and leaving a trail of corpses to mark his progress. By the time he landed, he was once again in front of the 2 leaders. At this point, the guards of the 2 leaders suddenly stiffened and stumbled over. Just as they touched the ground, their bodies separated into 2. Nobody saw a thing, especially how Ling Tian had acted, but the 2 leaders just seemed to have mysteriously died just like that. Another 2 moves were exchanged, and the leaders were forced back 7 to 8 steps. The heaven splitter in Ling Tian's hand suddenly shot upwards to the sky, and using his 2 bombs, he congealed his full strength, striking out 8 times in a row, causing a strong gale to be whipped up. Ling Tian did not even bother to stay, his figure shooting up into the sky like a sword before grasping the heaven splitter. In one move, he crossed 100 feet before directly landing atop a horse. He reversed his grip on his sword and prodded the butt of said horse, causing it to neigh loudly and take off away from the battlefield. His voice traveled as he rode off into the distance. There have been some unforeseen circumstances. Everyone, please settle this quickly and return. I'll make a move first. The 3 seniors of Beyond Heavens, Ling Tian thanks you for your help in advance. As he finished speaking, so did the sound from the horse galloping vanish without a trace. It was only now that the 8 palms Ling Tian had sent out suddenly exploded outwards, blasting the two leaders of above heavens into little meat chunks scattering all over the battlefield. When Ling Tian had moved, he determined that they would die without a doubt, and hence did not even bother checking once. Ling Tian was so totally engrossed in the slaughtering that he did not even reply Ling Tian's words. Wherever his slim body passed, there were only dead, no injured. The above heavens disciples present were being cut down like leaves being blown off the trees by the autumn wind, only leaving a few heads for Yi Qingqian and the other beyond heavens members. Li Zhu flew past him, and behind her similarly was devoid of people. Both exchanged a glance, slightly nodding, before rushing forward once again, attacking the leaders of above heavens that Yi Qingqian and company were tangling with. The few leaders there were already at their wits' end, and upon the entrance of this new variable, they dropped down like flies without resistance. The bearded woodcutter flared up, shouting, "Busybodies!" sneaking an attack from the back. What a broken bar! Ling Jian's face turned cold. Li Zhu, however, was aware of the character of this man, knowing that he meant no ill will, and could only cup her fists and say, "Please don't take offense, Senior. There have been some changes in skybearing and we need to rush back as soon as possible. If there's any point that we offended you, please forgive us. We'll give you an explanation after all this has ended." Just like how the mountains are high and the rivers long, there will be a day where we will meet again. Signaling to Ling Jian, the two of them rose up into the air, snatching a few horses before rushing off, only leaving behind a trail of smoke behind them. On this plains reeking of blood, there were only the three Beyond Heavens members left staring at the field of corpses, looking at each other in dismay. How do we deal with the aftermath? The white-robed scholar sighed after a long time, before continuing, other than clearing the corpses, what else do we have to do? How scary those people are. Yi Qingqian only sighed and nodded, remaining silent. The bearded woodcutter swept his eyes across the battlefield, and something caught his attention before he stuck out his tongue and spoke in shock. "Isn't that so? There really isn't anything else we can do, deem it. Look at the actions of those three, they actually did not even leave a single one alive." After thinking about it, he scratched his head as he exclaimed, "Who was that black-robed kid that came much later? Why is he so domineering?" Ling Jian's eyes, cold and full of killing intent, were enough to let the woodcutter feel the chills even now. Gazing in the direction that the three of them had left, the white-robed scholar softly spoke, "It was that kid who killed the vice-sect head Ming Lingzhou with one stroke of his sword." The woodcutter started sweating immediately, his voice hoarse as he spoke. "How is that possible?" The white-robed scholar attempted to gaze as far as his eyes would allow, speaking with heavy suspicion in his voice, dressed in black, with a heavy killing intent almost comparable to Ling Tian. "In fact, it might even surpass Ling Tian's. Although I only shot him a glance due to my shock, I believe that the gentleman is someone who is extremely dangerous." Yi Qingqian laughed at this point. "That little brat is actually someone I recognize and is definitely a dangerous character. However, dangerous is good, because if you constantly wage war it would be strange if you do not even possess this little bit of killing intent. Besides, there's the Ling kid to restrain him, so he would not deviate to become some monster." Yi Qingqian's words were spoken untruthfully, in favor of Ling Tian. With the amount of killing intent exuded by Ling Jian, he could already be compared to a devil king, so how could it still be classified as some a little bit of killing intent? The white-robed scholar shot Yi Qingqian a look, before replying with a heavy expression. "In just today, we've already seen some of the top exponents of the Ling family, including Ling Tian. There are already three. While this three might have slightly weaker internal energies compared to us, their application of martial arts are already above ours, and their moves are equally ruthless. How much more strength then does Ling Tian actually keep hidden? To use such a strength to conquer the world, I believe that will not be a difficult task." No wonder he appears so confident. Yi Qingqian only sighed, "Brother White, while Ling Tian had his ambitions, he has not thrown away his sincerity. If such a character is really able to conquer the world, while he might have to resort of countless bloodshed at the beginning, he will be sure to bring fortune to his people in the future." Everyone is actually clear that in this chaotic world, Without spilling blood, conquering the world will only be a pipe dream. This is something unavoidable, and one does not have to be too concerned over it. The white-robed scholar remained quiet for a long time to come. Finally, he let out a long and melancholic sigh. Madly galloping along the way, Ling Tian had already sent out news to separately inform the Ling family courtyard and the Violent Wind gang. However, he only brought out 2 messenger falcons with him this time around a broken bar. Just as he was hoping for more messenger falcons to swoop down and respond to his commands, he found out that there were actually none left. A broken bar because his speed was too fast. It was too hard for the messenger falcons to spot him in this darkness, even though they were blessed with exceptionally good eyesight. A broken bar. Ling Tian sat on his horse, galloping crazily forward through the night like a hurricane. Under the intense pain from the sword stabbed in it, the sturdy horse ran ever faster as though it were mad. While it would not be able to last in the long run, in the short term it would still save a lot of time. With a light shout, Ling Tian shot off from the horse's back, and borrowing the forward momentum, rushed forward like an arrow. In an instant, he had already crossed over 100 feet. Behind him, one could hear the horse he was sitting on give out an agonized wail before collapsing onto the ground as its legs buckled. It had been ridden to death. Ling Tian's internal energy was fully diverted towards his movement techniques. He stuck close to the ground like a breeze blowing across the grass as he sped forward into the distance. Within these 50 kilometers or so, even the treasured blood horses would be unable to catch up to him. For the first time, Ling Tian felt a burning anxiety in his heart. Ling family courtyard. The Ling residents had some sort of countermeasure that Ling Tian had long ago arranged in case of any unexpected matters. During times of attack, the family members could silently hide without anyone being the wiser, so Ling Tian was not too worried about them. Furthermore, within the family servants, Ling Tian had arranged for a few peerless experts to guard the area as well, so he felt safe leaving his grandparents to stubbornly stay within the Ling residence. What he was worried about now was the place where there was the greatest military might ordinarily, as well as the greatest military stores and experts, the Ling family courtyard. Right now, the Ling family courtyard was not unlike the Ling family courtyard of old. It had reached an extreme state of weakness. Ling Tian, Ling Jian, Li Zhu, the 3 greatest experts of the Ling family courtyard were all out, and only Ling Chen, Ling Kai, Feng, Yan, Dan, Lei, and 19 were present. Furthermore, Ling Kai was still severely wounded from attempting to assassinate the Zhao family general the other time. Ling Chen, Dan, and Lei were the only few experts left, so how could they alone resist against hundreds if not thousands of the Lei family disciples? While there were still 20-odd men from the Blood Iron warriors on guard, facing such elite disciples of the pugilistic community, it would be great if they could protect themselves. Especially since Ming Leech had just led the army back to the camp, and it was at this moment when the men were tired and the horses weary. If anything happened at a broken bar, the normally domineering and strong Ling family courtyard was now at its weakness state. Furthermore, the Lei family were one of the 8 great aristocratic families. They were as famous as the Yu family, thus they definitely had the strength to back it up. Furthermore, they had come prepared this time. I've broken bar. Ling Tian did not even dare to continue thinking along this line, merely putting in his all to sprint forward. Ling Chen, Yu Bing Yan, Zhai Yanzu, Ming Leech, Shui Qianru. A broken bar. None of them were what Ling Tian could afford or wished to lose. But the enemy actually chose this time to quietly sneak and attack. What a penetrating move. If anything untoward happened towards Ling family courtyard, I, Ling Tian, swear using my parents' names of 2 lifetimes, that every single blood descendant of the Lei family will face my most cruel, inhumane treatment as revenge. I will let all of you have mouths but be unable to talk, ears but unable to hear, eyes but unable to see. I will reduce you to pieces but still barely alive, and let you witness all the pain available in this world. Under his mad sprint, Ling Tian's eyes had turned into a frightening red color. And there was still Yu Manlu. The presence of the Lei family indicated that it was definitely Yu Manlu who had invited them over. Why else would they appear in Skybearing of all places? If one said that this had nothing to do with Yu Manlu, even if Ling Tian was beaten to death, he would still refuse to believe it. At the relay station for horses, Ling Tian invaded the place like a whirlwind and rushed out in a matter of seconds, holding onto another horse with all its reins chopped off a broken bar. Harshly whipping it, the sturdy horse neighed and began to gallop as fast as it could. When its speed had reached its maximum, Ling Tian suddenly clawed down on its rear, drawing out wound after wound, dripping blood. Under the extreme pain, the horse galloped even faster, the speed rising a few notches from its original fastest broken bar. Behind Ling Tian, less than 50 kilometers apart, there were two other people spurring their horses on as though they were mad, Ling Jian and Li Zhu. Both of them were considered to have a cold personality, so they did not even communicate once throughout the entire journey. At this moment Li Zhu had long forgotten to annoy Ling Jian, and Ling Jian had already forgotten the grudges between them. All that was on their minds was the Ling family courtyard far, far ahead. Their hearts were also burning with the same anxiety, and following the hoofbeats of the horses pulling them forward, they got all the more anxious. This was especially so for Ling Jian, to the point that his eyes were nearly completely red. Both of them had on dark expressions, icy cold looks without a single word being uttered between them. Just killing intent that threatened to overflow the heavens. The two of them at this moment resembled rumbling volcanoes that were ready to erupt. The attack on their Ling family courtyard thoroughly pushed them close to the point of eruption. Ling family courtyard, Ling Chen, you have to hold on. Chapter 593, Lei family invades. The Ling family courtyard was in imminent peril, when a countless number of black-robed experts suddenly assaulted the Ling family courtyard. Ling Chen, Shui Qian, and Yu Bingyan were sitting together. When they rushed out, they realized that the entire Ling family courtyard had turned into an absolute mess. They had only received the news of the Lei family using this divide and conquer method of attacking Skybearing 4 hours ago, and while Ling Chen had been hastily gathering all the forces available around them, it was obvious that Skybearing now had no more strength left for them to draw upon a broken bar, and furthermore, compared to the grandeur that the Lei family possessed, their strength could be said to amount to nothing. A broken bar. At this point, the various traps and ambushes that Ling Tian had insisted on installing now came to great use. Broken bar. The head of the Lei family, Lei Zentian, was an extremely traditional man, and someone who paid close attention to the prestige of the aristocratic family. He did not put anyone in his eyes, and in his heart, there were only a few people who were considered to be worthy of cooperating with. Yu Manlu happened to be one, and furthermore the most optimal one, thus he was very satisfied with the agreement signed by both sides. At the same time, he was prudent and extremely cautious when he did things. He knew clearly that for someone like Yu Manlu to take this family as his enemy, they had to possess some kind of strength, and in order to deal with it, the kind of strength he himself needed to mobilize. Thus, for this attack on the Ling family, he did not dare to underestimate them and commanded the Lei family to move out in full force, a total of 3,500 men, 1 sect head, 7 elders, 3 deacons, and goodness knows how many core, inner and outer disciples, including the various pavilion heads. Just the head count of the experts near 200. Lei Zentian was never willing to fight a war that he didn't have a guarantee of winning. When he had to fight, then he would use his full strength, like how a lion would use its full strength even when hunting a rabbit. Lei Zentian believed that with this amount of strength he would be able to defeat the Ling family in one fell swoop. Even if the Ling family courtyard hid their strength, they would face annihilation as the only possible ending. During this time period, Lei Zentian also scrutinized the overall situation in the Heavenly Star continent. He knew that inside this game of chess, The linchpin was actually the Ling family. It was not just the place the Ling family resided in, but also the strength of their family. As for the differences between the two, Ling Tian had also separated them clearly. For a nouveau riche family like the Ling family, whether it was finances or the military or even martial skills, they would all be in the stage of a great expansion. As such, when so many expansions took place together, it would form into a frightening strength. While Ling Tian looked down in disdain at the Ling family's nouveau riche expansion, in regards to them as an opponent he needed to face, he never dared to let his guard down. He had made sure that he scrutinized every single report he obtained about the Ling family without missing a single point. As such, he was able to accurately predict that this was the time when the Ling family courtyard was at its weakness, and naturally, he also used this timing to state his conditions towards Yu Manlu. His calculations went as predicted. Under such an opportunity, Yu Manlu would not reject them despite how harsh the conditions were, because he required Ling Tian's help. As such, Ling Tian's blackmail proceeded smoothly this time, surprisingly smoothly. Conversely, Ling Tian did not fear that Yu Manlu would not breach the contract after he carried out his plans. This was, in fact, the Lei family's first time carrying out an assault on the Heavenly Star continent. As such, they planned to use this to intimidate and awe the Yu family, so they would certainly reveal a portion of their strength. Ling Tian was unwilling to be classified as a mere chess piece by Yu Manlu, so he wanted to obliterate the Ling family and take control of Skybearing. Even if Yu Manlu were to rip off all pretenses with him in the future, with the combination of the Lei and the remnant Ling family's strength, the Yu family would still have to pay a huge price to succeed. This was the escape route that Ling Tian had planned. Ling Tian's objective was not really to become a world hegemon, but rather he wanted power, matchless influence. Even if he could not be on the same level as Yu Manlu, he had to ensure that he and only himself was seated directly below the former, such that his influence would still be unmatched in the world. If he possessed such power, would Yu Manlu still not allow him to sit on the same level as him? His every command could force him to not eat and sleep well, and to throw the entire continent into chaos. Furthermore, Ling Tian was someone extremely crafty, as he had already decided that whether or not Yu Manlu agreed to his conditions, he would still attack the Ling family. While the Ling family might be the greatest enemies of the Yu family now, who was to say that they wouldn't become the enemies of the Lei family in the future? Since the Lei family had tied themselves to the same raft as the Yu family, Ling Tian was bound to also target the Lei family. Once Ling Tian was given time to grow and stretch his claws out, then it would be a head-on fierce battle. With Ling Tian's battle achievements as well as Ling Tian's own feeling, he did not have any guarantees of winning. Right now, this was when Ling Tian's forces were at their weakest. It was an opportunity of 1,000 years. If they did not move now, then when? Furthermore, Ling Tian was absolutely unwilling to allow a grassroots family clan, and a nouveau riche, to press down upon his head. Even if it was just to be equally famous, Ling Tian was unwilling to accept this. For the high and mighty Lei family, how could it be possible for them to be on the same level as a grassroots family? Thus, Ling Tian decided to arrogantly proceed with his plans. In his imagination, this operation specifically targeted the time when the opponent was at their weakest, and would definitely be a one-sided massacre. The opponent's key figures were all not present, especially their backbone Ling Tian, only leaving behind a few weak, wounded, and ill people. Wasn't that easy to clear up? The troop lineup of the Lei family this time could be said to be luxurious, employing their strongest force to strike at the Ling family courtyard. This was akin to using a chainsaw to kill a chicken, annihilating them like Mount Tyke rushing down on them. As such, Ling Tian split his troops into two parts, one of them consisting of a small group of riders, including his second brother Lei Zhenping, to storm the Ling residence, while the other elites would be led by him and crush the Ling family courtyard in a show of utmost glory. However, while the Ling family courtyard did not even have a third of its military strength currently, it would still be a pipe dream for the Lei family to take it down in one fell swoop. What Ling Tian did not foresee was that even before they could invade the Ling family courtyard, They had already met with trouble. They had used quite a bit of effort before in clearing out all the security guards, but before they could exclaim in joy and rush in, they had already alerted the other party. Following some fool blindly walking around, a gentle chime sounded. This immediately expanded into a wave of bell chimes, as though all the bells had gone crazy. Ling Tian suddenly felt as though he had stepped into a swampy pool, and this swamp was as good as a blood-sucking devil. He never in his dreams thought that there would be so many traps hidden inside the Ling family courtyard, and furthermore designed so elaborately. Arrows shot out from everywhere like rain, as well as various flying knives and needles. All sorts of hidden weapons. The seemingly innocuous ground would be revealed to be a pitfall once stepped on. Just when they thought that the ground was booby-trapped and that they should proceed through the air, the trees suddenly started spraying out noxious toxic fumes or broken bar. Looking at the increasing losses in his own elites, Ling Tian felt heartache as well as anger. This was the foundation of his power that he was relying on to seize control of the country. To think that in just the first wave of assault, a good 200 elites were already lost, and what they exchanged with was merely around 10 random guards, as well as a whole patch of traps. The 200 did not even include the injured and the poisoned. Ling Tian let out a loud howl and gave out a command. The remaining troops split up into 10 separate sword formations, with 3 top experts at the vanguard resembling sharp knives, and they quickly brought their troops to leave this blood-sucking territory. This was the most effective measure, as under the command of a few top experts, the traps prepared by the Ling family courtyard were rendered harmless. The only damage they could still deal resided in the arrows shooting from all directions, but with the continued advancement of the experts, even that lost its effectiveness. Because the Ling family was doing a dusk assault with only martial artists in their formations, as well as the fact that more than half of the sentinels inside the Ling family courtyard had been wiped out due to their inability to react. This made the Ling family rush in as a single group. This caused the crossbows on top of the Ling family courtyard walls, which possessed the highest firepower in the base, to be rendered useless at this moment. If not for the above factors, just the crossbows would be enough to result in the deaths of a good portion of the Ling family members, at least 30% if not more. Just as the Ling family successfully broke through the first defensive perimeter, the personnel inside the Ling family courtyard were also fully activated. This was not because their reaction times were too slow, but rather because the assault of the Ling family was too sudden and their capabilities too extreme, which resulted in this scenario. People were hysterically screaming around the Ling family courtyard, causing a huge ruckus, and dozens of torches were lit and thrown out. However, Ling Tian had predicted that such a situation would happen when he was building the courtyard, and hence only used limestone and mud bricks in the construction. Therefore, there was no fear that enemies would use fire to attack them, as it would merely cause some mild chaos. Just as they were attacking the third courtyard, there came a piercing howl that caused the sentinels of the Ling family who were clashing with the Ling family to suddenly withdraw like a receding tide. At the same time, over 100 torches flared into existence, illuminating the entirety of the courtyard as though it were daytime. A clear and piercingly cold voice sounded, "May I know what guests have come from afar to create trouble in the Ling family courtyard? Dare you report your names?" The voice was calm and level, not indignant and or angered, but though the voice seemed warm and friendly, it carried with it a thread of coldness. Following the voice, a peerless beauty appeared on top of the roof in front of the assailants. It was as though an immortal fairy amid the purest snow, or chain from the moon, had descended upon the earth. She carried a sense of holiness untainted by mortal dust, indifferently gazing at the experts from the Ling family. The night wind lightly waved her snow-white robes, as though she could ride off into the wind at any moment. As the various members of the Ling family took in her peerless magnificence, they were actually at a loss for words, including the Ling family head himself. Everyone felt at that moment, that let alone killing her, but to even raise their voice at her would be some kind of blasphemy. Beside Ling Tian, a youth in black had his eyes fully focused forward, and had an expression as though his soul had left his body as he stumbled forward and said, "Lady, this elder brother here is Lei Song, and I'm the young master of the Lei family. May I have the honor of knowing your name?" Beside him, Ling Tian was almost angered to death by his single sentence. He came this time to the Ling family courtyard because he had full confidence that he would succeed in crushing the enemy, but he was still unwilling to be tied in death feud with Ling Tian. His original intention was to slaughter the enemy without a single word, such that no hint of his family's involvement would be revealed. At that time, even if Ling Tian were to suspect anything, he had no proof to back it up. Ling Tian was even willing to push all the blame to the Yu family to absolve himself. But to think that his son would be such a useless trash to immediately reveal their family name, looking at his expression, he would most likely even reveal all his ancestors' names if she asked. Now that things have gotten to such a state, he could not subvert the blame even if he wanted to. This matter was just too shameful to reveal to the public. However, with so many people present, even if they managed to defeat them, it was impossible to completely silence them. This extremely dangerous character, Ling Tian, could now be considered to be his eternal enemy. It was surprising then, that even with Ling Tian bringing over 1,000 of the Lei family's elite disciples, together with Ling Tian and the people in the Ling family courtyard, no one spotted someone hiding within a towering tree only a mere 100 feet away. Upon hearing the sentence uttered by young Master Lei, he sneered, "The world is full of miracles." To think that such a person who could be so quick-witted and lecherous thoughts would exist. This little B-Street road from the Lei family ought to be considered an alien. After that, he let out a long sigh before frowning as he lightly whispered to himself, "This old man here came to settle scores with Ling Tian. But damn it, not only did I not find him, but I coincidentally bumped into this kind of matter. Should I care or not care?" To not care would not make common sense, but to interfere would be to let the little brat off too easily. Shaking his head, the hesitating man in black lightly sighed and narrowed his eyes. Under the tree, the white-robed woman's cold eyes looked over, and seeing Lei Song's lecherous face, she immediately felt a revolting hatred towards him, icily calling out, "To think that it's a group of Lei family experts that arrived? The Lei family and my Ling family have no hatred nor grudges all along, and neither are we connected, so why did you come here to offend us? Please give us a reason." The white-robed lady was, of course, Ling Tian. After hearing someone sound the alarm, she did not choose to rush out to meet the enemy but rather chose to prepare and arrange everything first. Ling Tian's first decision was to send people to escort Yanzu and Minglij into the secret chamber in the belly of the mountain. Although both resisted, under the orders of Ling Tian, they were still towed in by the guards. In Ling Tian's heart, while the Ling family courtyard could be lost, they could definitely not afford to lose both Minglij and Yanzu. One of them was the commander for the military, while the other the overseer for administration and finances. So long as both of them remained safe, then Ling Tian could quickly rebuild his family's strength in the shortest time, rising back to glory once again. As such, the two of them had to be absolutely safe. When Ling Chen wanted to drag the injured Ling Kai into the secret chamber as well, she realized that the experienced assassin had actually vanished from his treatment room. While no one knew where he went, everyone could guess what he wanted to do. Broken bar. As for Yu Bingyan, that normally soft and weak lady suddenly displayed a fierce resoluteness. She embraced death wholly, refusing to retreat and instead choosing to stick with Ling Chen all the way. Helplessly, Ling Chen could only agree, and in the dark informed Shui Qian that if the situation went south, she was to risk offending Yu Bingyan and knock her out to ensure her safety. Ling Chen never thought that this scenario would ever appear. Upon hearing the enemy alarm being activated, she knew that this was the most crucial battle when the Ling family courtyard was at its weakest, and this was also an unavoidable life and death battle. The strength of the enemy had far outstripped all the people that they had ever faced, and even if they had their full strength currently, success was also not guaranteed. Not to mention the present when they had no ability to defend themselves. But even a starving camel is still bigger than a horse, and the Ling family courtyard was not willing to allow just anyone to trample on their pride. The killing intent in Ling Qian's eyes intensified. "Since you want to annihilate my Ling family courtyard, then I'll make you pay the respective price." As the lady owner of Ling family courtyard, Ling Tian had already made the decision that even if she had to sacrifice her life, she would protect the foundation and career of the man she loved. Under her instructions, the remaining few experts left inside the Ling family courtyard, Ling Feng, Yun, Lei, Dian, and 22, had all hidden in the shadows, awaiting the chance to assassinate their targets. Toward these 5 silent yet famous assassins, Ling Tian only gave one instruction, that whatever target they choose, they had to finish them off in one blow, and be able to protect themselves from the aftermath and not sacrifice themselves like a martyr. Ling 6, 7, 8 and 9 were hidden behind Ling Tian, and her instructions to them were to protect their lives at all costs. They could not afford to die, since in their hands was the key to the intelligence network that Ling Tian would use to encompass the entire world. A broken bar, they were Ling Tian's eyes and ears, and also the foundation of his strength and plans. Ling Tian's eyes now coldly gazed on Lei Zentian, as she slowly replied, "The Lei family's head, Lei Zentian himself?" While she phrased it like a question, her tone sounded like she was already certain. That's right, Ling Tian only had one motive in her mind, that was to stall for as much time as possible. This was skybearing after all, the headquarters of the Ling family, and the longer they dragged out this battle the better their chances of survival. Lei Zentian could only let out a bitter smile. He did not expect this white-robed lass to have such penetrating eyesight to be able to tell him apart at first glance. A feeling suddenly surfaced in his heart, as though he was talking to someone high up, so high that she was looking down on him as she spoke. This was the first time in his life that he had such a feeling. Not even the Yu family head Yu Manlu had given him such a feeling. But this white-robed lass seemed to hold control of the entire world within her hands, making Lei Zentian and the others feel ashamed of their own inferiority in front of her. Coughing twice to recover his senses, Lei Zentian indifferently replied, "I am precisely Lei Zentian of the Lei family. May I know who you are? And what position do you hold within the Ling family courtyard?" Ling Tian only shot him an indifferent gaze, with no hatred nor surprise in her eyes as she replied, "I am Ling Tian, and I'm the owner of this Ling family courtyard." "You're the owner of the Ling family courtyard?" "There's a broken bar. This means that you're the profligate Ling Tian's woman." Before Lei Zentian could speak, his son Lei Song by the side had already interjected, screaming out. His voice was laced with sadness and fury, as well as a strong sense of envy. Ling Tian only shot him a disdainful look in response as she arrogantly replied, "The owner of the Ling family courtyard is naturally young noble Ling Tian's woman." "What's wrong with that?" Lei Song let out a furious yell, almost vomiting blood as he shouted out, Kill them all, don't even leave one alive." A broken bar. The moment this jerk saw Ling Tian, he thought that she was saintly and pure with such peerless beauty, and he had long claimed her for himself in his mind. To think that Ling Tian did not even hesitate at all and immediately admitted that she was Ling Tian's woman, this made Lei Song so envious that he almost went insane. Surprisingly, the Lei family actually has 2 family heads. Ling Tian's eyes flashed with contempt and she despicably added, "When the family head is talking, there actually exists someone who dares to send down a command without permission." "Family head Lei, you have a really good parenting method." "I'm not sure, is it the son who listens to the father or the father who listens to the son?" Ling Tian's ridicule made the faces of everyone from the Lei family side extremely ugly, whereas the Ling family side started to laugh out loud, and hooting and jeering noises came out after. Lei Zentian's face sank as he deeply spoke, "Whoever is the Lei family head, or how we do our teachings, that isn't in Mrs. capacity to care. You should be more worried about the lack of reinforcements, even though you're trying your best to stall for time. Before tomorrow afternoon, there will not even be half a soldier coming over as reinforcements. It's enough for me to raise the entire Ling family courtyard to the ground." At this point, the last few straggling riders from the Lei family had also arrived. Everyone held on gleaming blades and swords, their expressions ferocious. Ling Tian merely gazed at the multitude of Lei family experts on the ground, coldly replying, "Since that's the case, Then I'll invite the Lei family to introduce your distinguished experts to us, allowing us juniors to die an honorable death. To know which expert in whose hands we will die is also good. At least it will prevent us from going to the netherworld as a muddled and confused spirit." A trace of anger suffused in Lei Zentian's eyes, and he shouted out, "Lowly servant girl, how dare you even think of trying to stall for more time?" He waved his hands, shouting out loudly, "Gil!" If Lei Zentian took the time to introduce the various troops and riders, even if it was limited to just his core disciples and above, that would take at least half an hour. Furthermore, Ling Tian could still take that time to come out with more questions to drag for time a broken bar. Thus, Lei Zentian made up his mind immediately. Ling Tian however coldly snapped, "Stop, I still have something to say." Lei Zentian raised a hand as he sneered, "Don't tell me you wish to surrender?" The moment he spoke, Lei Song, who was beside him, revealed an expression of ecstasy. If this beauty were to surrender, then he himself could a broken bar. A clear smile surfaced on her face, as though a pure lotus flower had just bloomed. This sight caused everyone's vision to be solely focused on her. Right at this moment, Ling Tian spat out a ruthless sentence, "This place is the Ling family courtyard. All visitors are guests, and all guests should follow the will of the host. If you want to start the killing, then it should also be said by myself. All of you, slaughter them. Since we have to act, then I might as well as first." Ling Tian excitedly thought, this way, she would create an ideal scenario, allowing Ling Feng and the others to act to their own benefit. Just as her voice faded, within the shadows, 5 silhouettes shot out like lightning, and simultaneously, there were 5 screams of misery marking the start of the battle. Chapter 594 Battle of the Courtyard. Amid the endless roars, the 5 black figures retreated like 5 bolts of lightning. Their figures instantly retreated from the middle of the plaza before jumping up into the sky and disappearing into the darkness. On the ground, there were traces of dripping blood, and Ling Lei suffered from a sword cut when attempting to assassinate the other party. Lei Zentian was devastated. Facing an assassination from such a short distance, there wouldn't be many capable of avoiding the assassination techniques that Ling Tian had personally taught. Of the few who could accomplish such a feat, they definitely wouldn't be part of the Lei family's experts. Lei Zentian was naturally an exception, and thus Ling Feng and the rest did not make him their target but chose the other Lei family experts. All of the targets that they picked were experts who they were confident that they could take down. However, the Lei family truly sent all of their elites this time. Even with absolute confidence and catching their enemy off guard, Ling Lei had still suffered from a counterattack. However, the fatalities of the Lei family were far worse. Under the lightning-fast strike, 5 Lei family elders who were top-notch experts in the family were sliced at the throat, and an arrow of blood shot out afar before they lifelessly collapsed onto the ground. The other members of the Lei family did not even have the time to react. The many members of the Lei family stared at the 5 corpses before them and trembled. Some of them trembled with shame, others with anger, but the most with a broken bar fear. These 5 individuals were extremely prominent individuals within the Lei family, and each of them had an extremely high level of martial arts. Who would have thought that they did not have the strength to fight back in the face of an assassination? "SLT, you dare to trick me!" A thunderous roar sounded, and Lei Zentian's eyes turned red as he pounced forward in an almost maniacal manner. He charged right at Ling Tian, who was on the roof, and commanded, "Gil!" The black-robed man in the tree looked at Lei Zentian gleefully and muttered, "This father and son pair are truly alike. They are both equally stupid. What is the point of talking to your enemy? Do you really think that your enemy will surrender in their very own territory? Hopelessly idiotic." As he said that, the black-robed man looked at Ling Chen with a smile, This lass is just as crafty as Ling Tian. That darn Ling Tian has truly ruined such a fine young lady. A broken bar. Ling Tian intentionally provoked Ling Tian so that he would launch his attack towards her and she would be able to tangle with him. As long as Ling Tian could not easily give out his orders, it would be the most advantageous situation for Ling Feng and the rest to drag out the battle. Just when Ling Tian's figure was halfway in midair, Ling Tian jumped off the roof and received Ling Tian without the slightest bit of fear. Gill. Her cold eyes were fixed on Ling Tian's figure and she circulated her divine ice formula to the maximum. 9 ghostly figures had also charged out the moment Ling Tian gave her orders and they began their massacre among the Lei family troops. They were Ling Feng, Yan, Lei, Dan, 22, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Following the 2 of their commands, the whole Ling family courtyard erupted with battle cries all over as the forces from both camps clashed with each other. The usually tranquil courtyard had turned into a slaughterhouse. Feng Mo's shoulder was still wrapped up in bandages as he had yet to recover from his previous battle, but he still dashed forward like the wind to block a leader of the Lei family. In midair, Ling Tian's palms clashed together with Ling Tian's palms firmly, and with a loud bang, the 2 of them shot backward in 2 different directions. Ling Tian felt his hands freeze and the chilly air assaulted his forearms before slowly creeping into his shoulders. He could not help but be startled and hurriedly circulated his inner chi for a full 3 cycles before he could get rid of that numbing feeling. Who would have thought that the frail-looking beauty before him would be actually a top-notch expert? Not only was her cultivation extremely profound, her cultivation formula was also extremely strange. Despite matching a palm strike with him head-on, she did not lose out in the slightest. Ling Tian floated backward and she felt a necking feeling on her arms. A sweet feeling filled her throat and she almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Ling Tian truly lived up to the name of being the family head of a great family. The height of his strength could be ranked among the top 5 of all the experts that Ling Tian had seen before in her life. His cultivation was probably higher than Ling Jian and not any lower than Li Zhu. The depth of his cultivation wasn't something that she would be able to contend with. But if she allowed him to escape from her grasp and deal with the others from the courtyard, their Ling family courtyard would truly be doomed. As long as she could tangle with him for a while longer, she would be able to increase their chances of victory. The tip of Ling Tian's feet tapped onto the roof lightly and she propelled herself forward again. After making a somersault in midair, she charged at Ling Tian again, and with the flash of a chilly glow a sword appeared in her hands. Under the reflection of the surrounding fire torches, it glowed with splendor. Ling Tian let out a roar and shot forwards to tangle with Ling Tian in an intense battle. Those fighting beneath them could only see a black and white shadow tangling with each other in midair, unable to tell them apart. The 2 of them met speed with speed, and in a short instant, they had already exchanged dozens of blows. Lei Song blocked Ling Seven's sword with his own sword. While this little brat was a hopeless lecher, all of his subordinates fought with valor and he did not lose out the slightest when fighting against Ling Seven alone. He even had the extra energy to shout out to his father who was fighting above, "Father, show some mercy. Don't harm here a broken bar." Hearing those words, the black-robed man in the tree almost fell out of the tree. This brat is truly a work of art. He couldn't be bothered about his father but only cares about the beauty. He is truly frivol as a broken bar. Ling Tian, who was fighting an intense battle against Ling Tian, almost fainted from anger. "This daddy here is fighting a life and death battle with the lass and could lose my life at any moment. You disobedient child are still caring for the fairer sex at this moment? You are still thinking about the welfare of the greatest enemy before me? If I don't harm her, should I stretch my neck out and hand my life over to her?" All the experts of the Lei family spread out into formation and flooded over like a tsunami a broken bar. While the experts of the Ling family courtyard were powerful, they were too few in numbers and many of the Blood Iron warriors were still injured. Even if the Lei family experts were to gang up 3-1 on the Ling family troops, they would still have a large excess of soldiers. Even if the soldiers of the courtyard were elites among elites and were invincible against ordinary soldiers, when facing a troop full of martial arts experts who had the absolute advantage in numbers, They were extremely vulnerable. In just a few short minutes there were countless troops who were already seriously injured. Ling Feng and the rest who had the upper hand for a short period of time indeed managed to slaughter their enemies like they were dicing up vegetables. However, they were quickly surrounded by the experts of the Lei family and fell into an encirclement. An assassin needed to catch his enemy off guard and kill his enemy with a single strike. Even when facing an expert at the same level, he would also have the confidence to kill with a single strike. But when facing enemies in a head-on battle, they were no different from ordinary martial artists. At the very most, they would be slightly more agile. Even if the troops of the courtyard fought with all of their strength, the gap between their strengths was far too large, and the troops of the courtyard were forced into retreat. As the battle became more and more miserable, the members of the Lei family had managed to break through the third garden and were driving the Ling family troops into a desperate situation. With her left palm and sword in her right hand, Ling Tian tangled with Ling Tian in an intense battle. Since she wasn't a match for Ling Tian, she couldn't help but be on the losing end. However, her sharp sword chi and strange inner chi together with her determination to perish with Ling Tian also created plenty of trouble for him. Since he had the ability and confidence to beat Ling Tian, why would he have to accompany her in death? He only needed to exhaust Ling Tian's inner chi by dragging out the battle for a long time, and there wasn't a need for him to take any risks. Feng Mo was currently fighting 3 Lei family experts alone at the moment. His own martial arts weren't at the level of top-notch experts, and together with the fact that he had yet to recover from his injuries, he could only clench his teeth and fight the 3 enemies in front of him. Finally, he gradually couldn't withstand the combined attacks from his opponents and was already bleeding in many parts. All of a sudden, a lovable shout could be heard and 2 slender figures flashed in front of Feng Mo, attacking together to block 2 of his enemies. The 2 slender figures who had just arrived were Shui Qianer and Yu Bingyan. Zhu Ling and Zuf both guarded closely beside Yu Bingyan's side, refusing to be even an inch away from her. Yu Bingyan's movement was extremely agile and her swordplay was exquisite. Every time she stabbed out, it was as though she was a peerless painter adding a masterful stroke to create a masterpiece. Her swordplay was filled with sharpness but also carried with it the fresh smell of paper. This was what Yu Bingyan had comprehended over the past year of seclusion. She had already attained minor accomplishments in melding her martial arts into painting and melding painting into martial arts. The moment she took action, she managed to create this dreamlike effect that not only managed to break Feng Mo out of a sticky situation but also killed and injured countless Lei family experts. Shui Qianer's sword was like the wind, and the moment she brandished her sword, she suppressed her enemy with killing intent burning in her eyes. The Ling family was already Shui Qianer's final hope, so how could she allow the Lei family to wipe them out? Compared to the many Ling family members present, Shui Qianer was definitely the one who was the most anxious for the Ling family courtyard. Even though she wasn't part of the Ling family was already her final hope. If the Ling family courtyard was in peril, Shui Qianer would definitely risk her life to prevent its destruction. Shui Qianer's true strength was not weaker than Ling Kai and the rest. The moment she took action, many Lei family members also perished under her hands, and she was no weaker than Yu Bingyan. As Shui Qianer killed the enemies of the Lei family, she looked at Yu Bingyan with shock in her eyes. She had always heard that the little princess of the Yu family was weak and a martial arts trash. However, after seeing Yu Bingyan take action today, while Yu Bingyan was still a distance away from her, ordinary experts were no longer a match for her. The exquisiteness of Yu Bingyan's moves was something that Shui Qianer herself had never seen before. Just what was going on? Looking at Yu Bingyan, who was supposed to be her opponent 2 years later and also her sworn sister, Shui Qianer was at a loss. The moment these 2 ladies charged out, they were actually able to slightly ease the situation of the Ling family. Feng Mo felt the pressure on him ease up, and he brandished his blade to force his opponent away before crying out with anxiousness, "Why is young madam out here? This place is extremely dangerous and you should get away from here quickly. If you get injured, how am I going to answer to young noble?" Yu Bingyan was already betrothed to Ling Tian and had once said in front of the first elder of the Yu family, I belong to the Ling family and am Ling Tian's woman. Even if I die, I will be the Ling family's ghost." With regards to Yu Bingyan's dedication and infatuation towards Ling Tian, Feng Mo and the rest were extremely moved, and thus addressed her as a young madam. Apart from Ling Tian, no one in the Ling family had such a privilege. Even Ling Tian's fiancée in name, Princess Zhao Yu, did not have such an honor. Yu Bingyan smiled and said, "If I can't protect my husband's estate, even if I am able to stay alive, how would I be able to face my husband? How can I live up to the name of a young madam?" She then did not say another word and dashed out with her sword to kill. While the battle was currently in a stalemate, it was becoming more and more miserable by the minute. The soldiers of the Ling family dashed forward batch by batch and they collapsed onto the ground batch by batch as well. Every time a batch of soldiers perished, another batch would quickly take their place and they would charge forward without a care for their life. The blood on the ground had already formed puddles and corpses were littered everywhere. The fifth yard was where all the injured soldiers of the Ling family had retreated to. They were all weak from their injuries but still guarded the door of the fifth yard to the death and refused to retreat even a single step. Dong! A Ling family soldier smashed onto the wall of the yard with blood trailing down from the corner of his lips. He clenched his teeth, pulled out a blade from his abdomen, and was about to charge out again, but the swords of two Lei family experts landed on him a broken bar. That Ling family soldier stared at his enemies with deadly intent but struggled for a moment before closing his eyes and collapsing on the ground with regret in his eyes. All of a sudden an ear-piercing roar could be heard and dozens of soldiers charged out from the fifth yard. They had either lost a leg or arm but had anger all over their faces as they wobbled forward unsteadily a broken bar. Seeing their brothers reduced to such a pathetic state to protect them, these burly men could no longer hold themselves back and they charged forward using their clutches, hands, or even teeth to fight the enemy or broken bar. They would rather die in the hands of the enemy than let their brothers sacrifice their lives for them. The injured soldiers charging out from the yard increased rapidly as though they were a bunch of injured beasts or broken bar. Feng Mo roared, "All of you get back! Who asked all of you to come out? Are you guys here to seek death?" A burly man trembled with a face full of fury and tears in his eyes as he roared, "Commander, this subordinate would rather die." Feng Mo roared crazily, "You still dare to talk back? After today, this daddy will take you apart piece by piece." That burly man chuckled and fresh blood suddenly spewed out from his mouth as he muttered, "Commander, I will accept my punishment now." A broken bar. He then collapsed weakly onto the ground as two bloody wounds opened up in his chest. He held firmly onto the neck of a Lei family soldier and refused to let go. The sword in that Lei family soldier's hand had already drooped down and he was no longer breathing anymore. Feng Mo roared crazily and dashed forward to knock the few Lei family soldiers aside. He could not be bothered about whether or not the Lei family soldiers were dead and he grabbed the body of his fallen brother. The eyelids of that burly man trembled slightly as though he wanted to open his eyes but failed to do so as he muttered, "A broken bar. I did note a broken bar suffer loss, at least a broken bar. He could not even finish his sentence before he took his last breath. Feng Mo's eyes and face was flushed completely red in anger as he slowly laid the burly man down. Letting out a loud roar, he charged out a broken bar. The sky was gradually becoming bright. The 3,000 experts of the Lei family had arrived at midnight and the battle had already lasted for over 6 hours. Both parties suffered countless casualties, and while the Ling family courtyard seemed to be on the brink of destruction, they were still holding on firmly. There were less than 2,000 people left among the Lei family troops. Shui Qian'er and Yu Bingyan had their backs facing each other and they were entrusting their backs to the biggest nemesis of their lives. They tried their best to defend against the gushing soldiers and were struggling more and more by the minute. Shui Qian'er's left shoulder and leg were already bloodied and Yu Bingyan also had a wound on her left hand. At the same time, Yu Bingyan was already limping and her left foot was obviously injured. It was impossible for her to unleash her exquisite fairy-like movement techniques any further. If not for Shui Qian'er and Yu Bingyan watching each other backs, the two of them would have probably perished already. The casualties who had settled down in the fifth yard had mostly rushed out from to dive back into battle. Apart from those who couldn't move, many seriously injured soldiers had charged out despite their injuries. In just an instant, many of them had died under the hands of the Lei family's warriors. After all, the troops of the Lei family were all martial arts experts, and it would be difficult for the Ling family soldiers to even perish together with them. Feng Mo witnessed all of these with devastation, and he was angered to the point he felt his chest exploding. However, it was a pity that he was trapped in an encirclement and it was impossible for him to provide them with reinforcements. Shui Qian's sword was brandished wildly and she tried her best to block a couple of Lei family warriors. Looking around, she saw a black-robed teen charging towards the two of them, and he was the son of Ling Tian, Liao Song. An idea sprang into her mind and she said to Yu Bingyan, "Little sister Bingyan, hold on alone for a moment. I will find a way to kill that little thief." As long as she could kill Liao Song, it would definitely be a huge blow to Ling Tian. Yu Bingyan responded with a nod and her sword light became 30% stronger. Her sword light covered the two of them and also dragged Shui Qian's enemy closer. While her body was slightly weaker than others, she carried with her a large number of great cyclic pellets no matter where she went. Every time her inner chi was depleted, she would take a pellet, and by this time she had already taken 2 pellets. Apart from physical exhaustion, her inner chi was not exhausted in the slightest. In the entire world, the only person who could use the great cyclic pellet to replenish her inner chi freely was probably Yu Bingyan. Of course, this was also because Yu Bingyan's body was far too special and it was impossible for another person to replicate her actions. Only Yu Bingyan wouldn't be afraid of the fiery medicinal effects of the great cyclic pellet bursting through her meridians. Her divine black negative meridians would automatically make use of the excess medicinal effects to repair themselves. It was akin to treating her injuries while fighting at the same time via broken bar. Shui Qian's body shook and she jumped out of the battle circle. Picking up a bow and arrow, she then hid behind Yu Bingyan and her figure seemed to have turned into Yu Bingyan's shadow. Circulating her inner chi, the bow in her hand was pulled to a beautiful crescent shape and Shui Qian imbued all of her inner chi into this arrow of hers. Releasing her hand, the arrow broke through the air. The moment the arrow was sent out, Shui Qian felt her whole body turn weak, but a fierce smile could be seen on her face. Liao Song killed his way over and the sky was gradually turning bright. He suddenly realized that there was a peerless beauty struggling amid the warriors of his Lei family. What made him the most surprised was the fact that this beauty wasn't inferior to the white-robed lady in the slightest. The lust in his heart was ignited again, and afraid that his subordinates would not know how to show mercy to the fairer sex, he hurriedly rushed over with the intention to protect the lady. The Lei family warriors already had the absolute advantage in the current battle. Thus, their young master was naturally free to go wherever he wanted. After taking a mere 2 steps forward, Liao Song saw the stubborn look on the beauty's face and he loved her even more. With a smile, he said, "There isn't a need to be afraid, miss." With Liao Song around a broken bar before he could finish his sentence, he saw a black shadow flash past his eyes before a short sharp pain on his forehead, and then he lost all feelings of pain. He was sent somersaulting into the air from the force of the arrow, and even in death, his eyes were wide open in disbelief, completely unaware of how he died. The sharp arrow shot accurately on his forehead and flew out from the back of his head. Even if an idiot was here right now, he would be able to tell that this young Master Lei who wanted to save the damsel in distress had been wiped out a broken bar. Young Master, a broken bar. A wave of cries sounded and a commotion could be heard. Following that, silence filled the air. Nobody would have expected that right before the battle was about to be over, right when the Lei family was about to emerge victorious, Ling Tian's son had actually died in battle. Ling Tian's palms were brandished wildly as he increased the pressure on Ling Chen. In order to deal with the pressure, Ling Chen was waving her sword wildly and she tried to tangle with Ling Tian with her exquisite movement techniques. A trace of blood could already be seen on the corner of her lips, and Ling Chen was already seriously injured under the ferocious attacks of the Lei family head. Even though her inner chi was extremely strange, her movement technique agile and her inner chi profound. It was also depending on who she was being compared to. After all, Ling Tian had decades of bitter cultivation, and this distance was not one which could be closed in 1 or 2 days. Especially the fact that Ling Tian's heavenly Penta-Lightning Sutra had achieved a realm which his ancestors had never attained. The depth of his cultivation was no weaker than Yu Manlu himself. It was already a feat for Ling Chen to survive until now. Right at this moment, a series of shrieks could be heard from beneath him, and Ling Tian felt his body shake. His face then turned completely pale and he pounced down, ignoring Ling Chen's possible counterattack. Bang! Ling Chen's palm strike filled with her divine ice chi struck squarely onto Ling Tian's back, and he spat out a mouthful of black blood, with his descent speeding up further. Ling Chen grunted coldly and ignored the tumbling blood in her body. Raising her sword, she charged forward after Ling Tian. But after just a few steps, 3 bearded elders appeared in front of her and blocked her path. They were the deacons of the Lei family, who were only second to the Lei family head. Ling Chen's inner chi was already at the brink of exhaustion, and her sight was already starting to dim. Her face was completely pale, and this beauty was already at her wit's end. However, she did not hesitate in the slightest, and she lifted up her sword while circulating her inner chi with her left palm and causing a gust of icy wind to blow past. She had actually chosen to initiate the attack, and while her attack couldn't be considered sharp, it was definitely majestic. Even a rice-sized pearl would glow with splendor. The 3 elders snorted and took action together. Chapter 595, Ling Kai's Strike. Ling Tian ignored the icy numbness and irritation of his chest wound, rushing to the scene where he last heard the scream and urgently asking, "Zhao Song, what happened to you? Where are you injured?" Right now, he still possessed a last bit of hope. However, all that was dashed the moment the words left his mouth, as he saw his son's corpse, dead with his eyes wide open. His son's head had been pierced all the way through by a sharp arrow. Whodid Ling Tian jumped in fury, gazing at the crowd with bloodshot eyes. The various warriors of the Lei family cast their eyes full of hatred in a certain direction. Over at that side, 2 ladies were leaning on each other, heaving big gulps of air with every breath. They gazed back at Ling Tian, their eyes meeting his that were full of overwhelming hate. "Lowly wretch, I'll kill you. Be buried along with my son." Ling Tian exploded in fury and flipped himself up into the air before rushing toward the 2 ladies. He channeled his full strength in midair, bringing with him the sound of lightning and howling winds, as though he could not be blocked. This was the strongest move of the Lei family, the Heavenly Penta-Lightning Sutra, being utilized at maximum capacity. Even if Ling Tian were to arrive now, or even if Yu Manlu was present, they would have to avoid this full-powered strike of his. Because the 2 ladies were totally sapped of strength, especially Shui Qian'er, since her life-threatening arrow had practically sapped her of all her powers. She was only relying on the support of Yu Bingyan to remain standing. So how could she avoid Ling Tian's fatal strike? The 2 ladies had the heart but not the strength, and could only close their eyes and await death. "Young mistress!" A few frenzied shouts rang out, followed by a series of dull thuds of broken bar. As the voices sounded, a few originally collapsed disciples from the Ling family suddenly let out a final spurt of strength, throwing themselves headlong before Ling Tian's palm in order to shield the 2 ladies behind them. A cruel smile hung on the corners of Ling Tian's mouth. With merely a wave of his hand, these few loyal and devoted warriors were slapped dead, their bodies burned black like charcoal, just as though they were struck by lightning. As for Ling Tian, his body posture remained unchanged as he continued swooping down on them. Zuling and Zuf, the 2 brothers, were already bone-tired from the battle, but upon seeing Yu Bingyan in danger, they dredged out the last bit of strength within their body to rise up and stand before Yu Bingyan. blocking the attack from Ling Tian. You family swordplay. Ling Tian's eyes twitched a little, but he suddenly shouted out, so what if it's the Yu family? If you killed my son, you have to pay with your life. He mercilessly threw out both of his palms forward. Two screams were heard as the Zhu brothers were thrown back to the ground on the spot. The light in their eyes immediately dimmed as they profusely vomited out blood that contained bits and pieces of their internal organs. Both of them stared with wide eyes at Yu Bingyan, trying to say something, but eventually collapsed onto the ground before they could speak. From the shape their lips were making, it was quickly run. Because of the anger affecting his heart, his innate protective skill was weakened. Under the final death blows with the Zhu brothers, Ling Tian was also slightly injured. He then stopped his assault and hollered instead, "Kill them all, don't leave one alive." Upon hearing that, the Lei family warriors swarmed forward like a wave of water. Ling Tian's figure swayed as he gazed at his son's ice-cold corpse, finally unable to hold back two streams of tears as they cascaded down his face. He originally thought that this would be an easy battle to complete with the main force of the Ling family not present, but he never imagined that he would lose over half of his own troops and even sacrifice his only son in this battle. This sort of shock was something Ling Tian was unable to accept, causing his mind to snap from the anger and sadness. As the sound of rushing wind rang out, Ling Feng and Ling Yun, covered in blood, appeared in front of Yu Bingyan. They were nearby battling it out, and upon seeing the situation become grim, immediately ignored the danger to their lives to rush over. Both were covered in injuries, and Ling Yun even suffered 2 deep slashes across his face, forming the number 10, A ring. Not only was his face bloodied, even his nose bridge was broken, but the killing intent he exuded was still as strong as ever, without any intention to retreat. "Young mistress, Miss Shui, if you do not wish for any more of our brothers to sacrifice themselves for you, then please hurry and retreat." Ling Feng's voice was not loud, but it drilled clearly into the hearts of both women. He also knew that only through this method would the two ladies then temporarily retreat. Yu Bingyan sluggishly looked at the corpses of the Zhu brothers who had accompanied her throughout her life. She was so heartbroken that she could not even talk, her mind a completely blank slate. Shui Qian'er's reaction was faster, affixing herself to Yu Bingyan and stubbornly dragging both of them back. "Kill the ladies and take revenge for our young master." As the Lei family warriors pounced forward in apparent craziness, Ling Yun and Ling Feng exchanged glances, both letting out an unrestrained smile. Ling Feng laughed loudly as he spoke, "Brother, it seems like this is going to be our final battle together." Ling Yun only smirked, causing the wound on his face to open and fresh blood to further seep out, creating a macabre scene. He laughed out loud as well. "There's nothing big about that. At least we can still be brothers in our next life." "That's right, we'll still be brothers in our next life." Ling Feng heartily laughed before lowering his voice and solemnly saying, "It's a pity that we did not get to see young noble and brother Jian one last time. This is probably my only regret." "Dumbass," Ling Yun scolded harshly, heavily retorting, "If we could see young noble and brother Jian, would we even still have a chance to die?" "That's true, a broken bar, ha ha ha, a broken bar." Amid their laughter, the two youth assassins rushed toward the crowd of enemies, knowing full well that they might die. But they were duty-bound not to turn back. Behind the crowd of Lei family warriors, there were another two relentlessly killing their way over. They fought without any care for their own well-being, their bodies stained with the blood of their enemies as well as their own. Clearing their throats, they seemed to almost be crying as they screamed out loud, "Ling Feng, Ling Yun, if you dare to just die like that, then our other 48 brothers will darned well make sure that we disown you." "FKU two self-centered brats, Ling Feng and Ling Yun, just try it, I dare you." These two were precisely Ling Tian and Ling Lei. Upon seeing the peril that Ling Feng and Yun were in, they too unhesitatingly threw down what they had on hand to rush over. However, due to the distance, they were too late. Ling Feng and Ling Yun's shadows had already merged in with the relentless human wave that was the Lei family warriors. Meanwhile, Ling Qian with one sword fended off the 3 deacons, falling into an absolute disadvantage the moment they first exchanged blows. After all, Having a strong aura did not mean anything in terms of combat ability. The three old men were not Liaosong either, and without a shred of pity for a beautiful lady, all their moves were powerful and ruthless, aiming for her life. Ling Tian's body swayed within the sharp sword winds like a naked candle bracing against the strong winds, with the possibility of being snuffed out at any given moment. A broken bar. Bang! One of the old men shot forwards, planting a palm on her lower abdomen before quickly retreating, celebrating the fact that he landed a blow. However, a sword suddenly flashed into existence, with Ling Tian taking the chance to slice off his offending arm. He fell to the ground, rolling and groaning in pain. Having been attacked on the lower abdomen, Ling Tian felt her world darken, and her true chi was in disorder after the strike. Coupled with the fact that she forcibly pushed herself to execute that sword move, she couldn't take it any longer and fell toward the ground like a broken kite. In midair, her mouth opened and out came a mouthful of bright crimson blood. A broken bar. The other two elderly men snorted in anger, as one went to support his comrade while the other shot forward like lightning towards Ling Tian, his palm acting as a sword as it shot towards her throat, intending to finish her off. At this life and death moment, a broken bar. Bang! A black shadow fell down from the air, a palm solidly landing on the attacking elder's chest. The elder ricocheted backward like a rubber ball as a contemptuous voice sounded, "To think that three elderly men, with a total age of above 200, would actually join hands to attack a lady around 17 to 18 years of age. Isn't that laughable?" As the person spoke, he had already caught onto Ling Tian's slim waist with one hand, bringing her as he soared backward for almost 100 feet, just like an otherworldly immortal. As they descended, his other empty fist clenched and thrust out, causing a strong gale to blow, knocking back the dozen or more Lei family warriors that wanted to surge up to them. At the spot where they last exchanged blows, the three deacons of the Lei family were gazing at the black shadow in suspicion and trepidation. They shared a glance as they asked, "Who is that person?" Disbelief could be seen in their eyes as they collectively took a gasp of cold air. Could it be Broken Bar him? It was during this moment that another black shadow soundlessly floated out into existence only a mere 40 to 50 feet in front of them, his hand holding onto a long and thin sword as he thrust out. Before the three deacons could react, the sword had already pierced through and withdrawn from the second deacon, and even as the latter's body started to weaken and collapse to the ground, the sword had already pierced through the first deacon's back. The first deacon of the Lei family forcibly twisted his body, striking out a vicious backhand onto his assailant's chest. With a wah sound, the assailant spat out a huge mouth of blood, but kept a death grip on his sword, dragging it across the deacon's body. The latter's eyes revealed an expression of incredulity as his waist opened up and his organs spilled onto the ground. Due to the extreme strength used in his retaliation, all of the great deacon's internal energy was transferred to his back. In addition to that, he tried to protect his organs from damage by surrounding them with internal energy and trapping the sword in place. He originally wanted to use the force to snap the sword, to prevent further harm to his body. He never expected the sword to be so resilient that instead of snapping it rebounded and sliced a path through his body. This ended up with the current scenario of his waist being sliced apart. Even his muscles strengthened by his internal energy were cut apart like tofu in front of the sword. This was the famous saying, "Joining hands with the assassin to kill oneself." As for the assailant, it was precisely the heavily injured Ling Kai. Upon hearing the sounds of the assault, Ling Kai was aware that the opposing force had a much larger strength, and that the Ling family courtyard was in peril. How could he only care about his own well-being to be squirreled away to hide? He secretly slipped out, and hiding behind a tree, he planned for the opportune time to strike. Upon seeing the fight between Ling Tian and Lei Tian, he secretly migrated to their location. Ling Kai's original intention was to save Ling Tian and spend his life in exchange for assassinating Lei Tian. With his acute senses, he had already noticed that Lei Tian was not someone who ignored his surroundings even in battle, so he had to wait till the latter's internal energy was almost exhausted before he made his move. Chapter 596, Powerful Reinforcement. What made Ling Kai disappointed was the fact that Ling Tian's strength was far out of his expectations. After waiting bitterly for 6 hours, he couldn't find a chance to strike. After that, Ling Tian's son was killed and Ling Tian charged forward without a care in the world. The target had suddenly disappeared and Ling Kai almost lost his breath from frustration. Following that, 3 deacons surrounded Ling Tian in an attempt to block her. Right when Ling Tian was in danger and Ling Kai was about to take action, another black-robed figure shot down from the sky and saved her. Ling Kai heaved a sigh of relief. While he didn't know whether or not the black-robed figure had good or bad intentions, Ling Kai could already recognize the black-robed figure from his aura. As long as Ling Tian was saved by him, she would definitely be safe. The thing that made Ling Kai overjoyed was the fact that those 3 Lei family deacons seemed to have gone crazy and become dazed while staring at the back of the black-robed figure. To an accomplished assassin like Ling Kai, this was like a gold ingot falling from the sky. Ling Kai immediately took action. With his martial arts, even if he wasn't injured and in his peak form, he would only be able to kill 1 out of the 3 at the very most and might even suffer from a counterattack. Not to mention the fact that he was currently heavily injured. Thus, Ling Kai had already prepared himself to perish together with the enemy. However, a series of coincidences collided with each other and Ling Kai was able to kill 2 Lei family deacons despite his heavy injuries. Furthermore, they were the 2 deacons who were uninjured. As for the last deacon, his right arm was already cleaved off by Ling Tian, and the way Ling Kai saw it, the injured deacon was no longer fit to be his target. He would naturally choose to target the 2 deacons with the highest combat strength. When he saw the first deacon's body squirming, Ling Kai knew that if he pulled out his sword, it would be impossible for him to kill the first deacon. While this sword was enough to heavily injure the first deacon, it wasn't enough to kill. Thus, Ling Kai risked taking a palm strike just so he could cleave the first deacon right through the chest. Now his mission was accomplished, and even though he suffered from a heavy palm strike on the chest and his innards were all shifted, causing him to lose all of his combat ability, Ling Kai was still extremely happy. It was worth it. The second deacon was stabbed from the back by Ling Kai and died on the spot. The first deacon was cleaved into 2 halves and it was naturally impossible for him to remain alive. Who would have thought that these 2 individuals who were mighty figures in the continent would have died such depressing deaths? They died in the hands of such a young hero and were even skewered like a shish kebab. The most depressing thing was the fact that this assassin was heavily injured but was actually able to kill the 2 of them alone. Dying such a depressing death, these 2 individuals must have definitely died with regret. Ling Kai weakly lay on the ground with blood oozing out of his nose and mouth. He did not even have the strength to lift a single finger, but he was still laughing heartily while coughing incessantly. Looking at the corpses of the 2 powerhouses beside him, he was filled with immense satisfaction. While this assassination attempt happened under such circumstances, this was the assassination that Ling Kai was most satisfied with. It was no wonder that despite being unable to move a single finger, he was still laughing so happily. AHHH. The third deacon roared in devastation. He never imagined and could not believe that the brothers who he had spent the last 70 years with would have been so cruelly killed before his very eyes. Looking the assassin in the eyes, he was filled with immense hatred. He could no longer be bothered about the arm that he had just lost and the blood spraying out from his wound as he walked towards Ling Kai step by step. He clenched his teeth and hatefully said, "Little beast Street Road, you dared to kill my 2 older brothers? This old man will tear you up into 1,000 pieces. If I miss even a single piece, this old man wouldn't be able to swallow this enmity. Little beast Street Road, I will let you know what it means to lead a life worse than death." Ling Kai weakly looked at the third deacon and laughed. "Old fool, 1,000 pieces? If you slice me up into a piece less, you would have been brought up by a prostitute. You will be satisfied." The third deacon smiled as he walked towards Ling Kai. Ling Kai looked at him without a single trace of fear in his eyes and scolded viciously, "Old Beast Street Road, were all of your ancestors prostitutes? How do they bring up a thing like you? Just looking at you fills me with disgust." The third deacon was angered to the point that he began trembling. Just when he was about to let out a curse, His face suddenly turned strange and a shiny sword penetrated out from his chest. The third deacon began to choke breathlessly with rage in his eyes and he pointed to Ling Kai with resentment. He wanted to turn around to see who killed him, but he was only able to turn halfway before collapsing lifelessly on the ground. Dog egg, a broken bar, are you alright? Two individuals charged forward with blood all over them and they were Ling 6 and 7. FK, don't call me dog egg. How many times have I said this? Why can't the two of you be streethards? Remember that. Ling Kai scolded in anger. Ling 6 and 7 smiled happily. Ling Kai saw that the two of them had gotten rid of their enemies and were charging over towards him. Thus, he tried to provoke the third deacon so that he could attract the third deacon's attention. Both Ling 6 and 7 then succeeded in a single strike. In truth, even if Ling Kai didn't provoke the third deacon, he was completely focused on Ling Kai. It was also because of this that Ling 6 did not even face any retaliation. At this moment, Ling Kai did not even have the strength to turn his neck and asked softly, I am going to fall asleep. A broken bar? Tell me what is happening. A broken bar. Ling 7 quickly took out a bottle of medicine and applied it on Ling Kai's body. Ling 6 then comforted, Sister Chen and both the Yu and Shui ladies are out of danger already. The Lei family has temporarily stopped their attack and the two of us ran over before hearing who that black-robed man was. We truly came at the right time. If we came a second later, dog egg would have been sliced up until egg yolk spilled out. Damn it, a broken bar, nothing good can come out from your mouth. The broken bar. Hearing that there was no longer danger, Ling Kai heaved a sigh of relief and fell unconscious. A broken bar. The black-robed man who appeared suddenly stood up straight and faced the encirclement of the countless Lei family experts without a single trace of fear. The Lei family warriors were all pressured by his immense aura and not a single person dared to move. Beneath the feet of the black-robed individual, there were two bodies that did not even seem like two human figures. They were covered with injuries all over and a puddle of blood had formed underneath their bodies. Ling Tian forced her eyes open and gasped, Ling Feng, Ling Yan. She then struggled to get up. The two individuals on the ground were Ling Feng and Ling Yan. There wasn't a single bit of complete skin on their bodies, but from the slight raising and falling of their chests it was obvious that they were still alive. They won't die. It's best for you to worry about yourself, the black-robed man coldly said as he put Ling Chen down. Ling Chen tried to steady herself before turning around to take a look. She was startled but yet relieved and said with gratitude, Thank you, Senior, for saving me. At the same time, she knew that as long as this person was here, the Ling family courtyard wouldn't be in danger any longer. There's no need, it was just out of convenience. The black-robed man snorted coldly with dissatisfaction in his heart as he thought, every time this daddy tries to find trouble with that brat Ling Tian, he always ends up taking advantage of me. After chasing that brat for half a year, his martial arts realm had actually increased rapidly. Now that I am here to ask him something, I have to save his lover and brothers and even help him guard his base. Did this daddy owe him something in my past life? Lei Zhenyan's eyes finally shifted away from his son's corpse and were locked firmly onto the black-robed man. A chilly glow could be seen in his eyes as he asked slowly, Martial Order Medallion Owner, Justice? The black-robed man looked at Lei Zhenyan calmly and replied, I never thought that the Lei family would know my name. After Justice's words left his mouth, the members of the Lei and Ling families were completely astounded. At the same time, silence filled the entire courtyard and those who wanted to take action did not dare to make a move. Martial Order Medallion Owner, Justice, he was the #1 expert in the world. Just this title alone was enough to shock all of them present. This baleful star was not an individual who knew what mercy was and was invincible. If they were to provoke him, how many lives would they have to use to escape from Justice's pursuit? The battle between both parties had become strangely peaceful because of Justice's appearance. This black-robed man was the #1 expert in the world, Justice. During this period of time, Justice's mental state was stimulated by Ling Tian and he felt that he was on the verge of a breakthrough. Just when he was feeling excited and about to enter into seclusion to make a breakthrough, rumors began flying across the continent that he was killed by Ling Tian. All of the rumors seemed so realistic as though it was the truth. Justice could not help but be depressed, and after some investigations, he found out that the rumors came from sky bearing. It was said that young noble Ling Tian said it when he was drunk, saying that he killed Justice like he was killing a chick in a broken bar. Justice was enraged, thoroughly enraged. This little brat actually dared to slander him. This was unforgivable. Just when he was wondering if he should find trouble with Ling Tian, he received news from his sect that they were seeking Ling Tian to take revenge in a broken bar. As a result, Justice became truly anxious. He was deeply aware of Ling Tian's martial arts and also the fact that Ling Tian was surrounded by experts. Apart from King Chen, who had some relationship with Ling Tian, if anyone else were to face Ling Tian alone, their deaths would be certain. As such, Justice rushed to Skybearing without any delay, and because he was in the depths of the mountains, it took him quite a bit of time. This journey of his was truly both arduous and hasty. After rushing for a long period of time, he finally arrived to witness the calamity of the Ling family courtyard. However, he was depressed to the point that he almost fainted a broken bar. Chapter 597, Justice Negotiates. Upon reaching the scene, he originally had the thought that to act would be humane, but not to act would be the logical choice. But if he chose not to act, then his conscience would never allow him to live with it. Furthermore, he had already given the heaven splitter to Ling Tian, which meant that they were now in the same camp. If he were to be a passive bystander as Ling Tian's people died, Justice would not feel comfortable in his heart. Even if he could somehow persuade his conscience, he could not ignore the heroism of Ling Feng and Ling Yun, and of course, he would not wish for the beautiful flower Ling Qian to die. In fact, there was still another reason that could not really be considered a reason. It was if Ling Tian were to come back and find that he didn't lift a finger to help, with his temper, he would take his anger out on everyone related. Who knows? The entire Beyond Heavens might actually be flattened by him alone. Justice believed that if Ling Qian and the rest were to die, then Ling Tian would not be above doing such a thing. After all, other than himself and Beyond Heavens whom he could not deal with, the rest would not require much effort from him. However, if he were to take action and help, then Justice would feel indignant. How lowly to have a brat slander you, but you still had to save his wife and his brother Sir Broken Bar. Isn't that as good as not having anything better to do? So long as Justice existed, even if Ling Tian wanted to take his anger out on Beyond Heavens, he could not do so. As such, to conclude, Justice himself didn't know what kind of feeling he was supposed to have now. He was totally confused, as though he was thrown in a mixed spice warehouse. Even he did not know just how much he cared about Ling Yuan, but did not wish to see him go insane. Looking at the important figures of the Ling family courtyard slowly walk behind him one by one, he realized that he had become some sort of protective deity or shield. Justice could only let out a bitter smile as he thought, "Damn it, I'm being pulled onto the pirate ship of that brat Ling Tian once again." Furthermore, it seems like I boarded it willingly this time. A broken bar. On the other side, Ling Tian let out an astringent smile as he commented, "No wonder." This old man always found it strange how the undefeated martial order head actually could not kill Ling Tian. So it turns out that you guys are already in cahoots. Beyond Heavens has also decided to come out of seclusion, and your candidate is Ling Tian, right? Having said this, Ling Tian suddenly burst into laughter as he venomously gazed at Justice, spitting out, "What a good martial order head! What a good martial order medallion! To actually make a fool of the entire world like this! Justice, oh Justice, the 1,000-year reputation of the Beyond Heavens has been wiped clean by you alone today." A broken bar. The martial order medallion, which is treated as a treasure beyond all others by emperors, actually turned out to be a joke. How laughable. Ha ha, ha ha. A broken bar. Justice's expression did not change, however, instead staring at Ling Tian and passively asking, "Ling Tian, are you trying to infuriate me?" Ha ha, my martial order medallion may not be able to kill Ling Tian, but to annihilate your entire Lei family is still something I can achieve. Why don't you give it a try?" Lei Tian's body trembled at that sentence, and he was struck speechless for a while. Justice's words were clear, that even the entire Lei family was incomparable to Ling Tian himself. Even with the entire influence that the Lei family possessed, it still was not comparable to Ling Tian's own power. Furthermore, Lei Tian had already woken up from his self-imposed anger, and he realized that let alone after the damage done to the Lei family during this assault, even if they were at their peak strength, they still could not afford to infuriate Justice. In the past, the Yu family was also a hegemon but still chose to swallow the insult given by Justice. So how could he even enter the eyes of Justice? The sound of hoofbeats sounded, heralding the arrival of more troops, and the Lei family's second master brought over 500 of the Lei family elites to rush over to the Ling family courtyard to reinforce the Lei family. When the Ling family sentries moved to obstruct them, Ling Tian came to her senses and commanded them to disperse and let them in instead. She was very clear that when facing these experts of the Lei family, that no matter the number of fully armed ordinary soldiers, they would all just be sent to their deaths. So long as Justice was standing guard here, the Ling family courtyard would currently be safe, and in the unlikely event that if Lei Tian did not care and was willing to fight till either the fish died or the net split, then having all her troops gathered in one area would be better. Since that was the case, why not allow them to enter, and settle everything face to face? After all, their situation now was already far better than before, and they might be able to hold on until Ling Tian returned. In addition, Ling Tian's heart still hid another idea. Right now, Lei Tian already had a hint of restraining fear towards Justice and did not dare to attack. But if the newcomers did not get the situation right and rashly attacked, they might form an irreconcilable hatred with the world's #1 expert. By then, the Ling family would not even need to lift a finger for the entire Lei family to be destroyed. How ingenious a broken bar! But Ling Tian had in truth trapped herself into a wrong logical sequence. True, Justice possessed exceptional martial talent, and be it any scenario of killing the Lei family's elites, it would be a simple task. But right here was over 2,000 experts of the Lei family. The Ling family courtyard was already at the end of their flight. If Lei Tian were to ignore all consequences and command the attack, then even if Justice were to take his head, everyone from the Ling family, including Ling Tian, would all have to be buried with him at this place. A pity that Lei Tian was just like the Yuman Lu of the past, treasuring his life too much. A broken bar. The second master Lei Zhenping came over to his brother's side with a perplexed expression, staring blankly at him as he said, "Big brother, with such a good position, why did you stop? Even if you want to recruit them right now, what's the use?" Lei Zhenping could see clearly that most of the people in the Ling family courtyard were either injured or crippled and did not have much fighting strength left, all clustered before his elder brother. Furthermore, there were even some severely wounded people in their surroundings, and it would be said that it was a complete wipeout. But his elder brother had already stopped the assault. This was preposterous. Even if one were to talk about stopping hostility for friendship, at this point, it wasn't too suitable, right? Lei Tian hatefully sighed as he replied, "How would I not know? We could have succeeded, but to think that at this critical juncture, the Beyond Heaven's sex Justice just had to appear to intercede for them, not compromising at all. Thus we are stuck in this situation. How goes your side?" A sense of hope sparked inside him, as he thought that even if he failed to obliterate the Ling family courtyard today, so long as he managed to crush the main residence of the Ling family, Ling Tian would still receive a terrible blow. Lei Zhenping, unfortunately, shook his head in depression as he replied, "Don't talk about it. I invaded the Ling family only to see over 100 servants of the family, but not a single one of the core figures. In my fury I set fire to the entire place, burning the residence to kingdom come." At this point he suddenly realized something and jerked. Justice? Martial order head? Why would he appear here? Wasn't he killed by Ling Tian? Lei Tian did not reply, only looking at the corpse of his son lying on the ground, revealing unspeakable anguish. Zhao Song, he broken bar. Lei Zhenping's body shook from the realization, and looking at the body of his nephew, his mind went blank as tears slid down his face. Suddenly, he turned and walked out with large steps, staring dead at Justice as he bit off word by word. "You're the Beyond Heaven's martial head, Heavenly Justice?" Justice did not even deign to reply his words, as though he was spouting nonsense. "If I'm not the martial order head, then would it be you instead? What bullshit!" Lei Zhenping's glare became more vicious, and in his anger he shouted, "This master is talking to you, are you mute?" Pa! Bang! A faint killing intent surfaced on Justice's face, and a white handkerchief suddenly appeared in his hands. He slowly wiped his hands as his incisive eyes stared at Lei Zhenping, who was knocked back by him, as though he was a ruler looking down upon his subjects. Just now, no one was able to see anything clearly, and they only saw Justice's figure blur a little before the pa sound was heard. The next thing they knew, Lei Zhenping had already flown backward, spinning once in midair before smacking on the ground like a rag doll. When his mouth opened, 5 or 6 teeth were spat out. This second master of Lei family was considered the first-rate expert of the current era, but actually could not even see how Justice moved. Seeing him lying on the ground like a dead pig, everyone's eyes widened in shock. Lei Zhenping slowly put down his son's corpse, standing up and gazing at Justice with a venomous look. His eyes were cold as he spoke. "Justice, are you insistent upon being the roof to shield all of the Ling family today?" Justice only let out an indifferent smile, as he mocked, "The Lei family is also considered one of the influential families of this current age, not to mention the reputation that the Lei family head possesses. However, they actually came over to flaunt their influence while the true owner of the Ling family was not around. This sort of behavior is something that this seat cannot tolerate. If you have some hidden grudge with Ling Tian, then I of course understand, since all enmities must be solved. However, your two families are just like the first and last of 8 poles strung together, never ever touching each other, so for you to do such a matter as attacking them is really food for thought." After mentioning this, Justice slightly lifted his head, and 2 piercing rays shot onto Lei Zhenping's face. Could it be that the high and mighty Lei family head actually does not dare to face Ling Tian at all? With the identity of family head, to actually not dare to face an opponent? I seem to have overestimated family head. Lei Zhenping's face turned red and he replied, "In the past, I had no hate, but it doesn't mean that it is not so now. Martial head, my only son by birth has lost his life in the midst of the Ling family, and I cannot exist under the same heavens as the Ling family. This is an irreconcilable hatred. The Lei family truly does not wish to make an enemy out of Beyond Heavens, and I beseech Martial Head to compromise, that so long as this Lei can get revenge for his son's death, then I will immediately retreat, and will owe you a favor on top of that, not daring to disobey any order of yours." Right now, Lei Zhenping was still unaware that his 3 greatest experts, the 3 deacons in his family, had already left for the heavens, or else he might really go insane a broken bar. "Take revenge for your son's murderer?" Ling Tian coughed lightly twice, before angrily staring at Lei Zhenping. To think that the Lei family head whose name is known throughout the world is actually just a person who fiddles with the truth and changes black to white. "If your Lei family did not come to invade my Ling family, how would your son die here?" "The matter was caused by your Lei family, and your son dying is considered an act of karma. Furthermore, the blood debt that your Lei family owes our Ling family has not been washed clean. The fresh blood of the Ling disciples has to be paid back doubled by your Lei family." Chapter 598, Ling Tian's arrival. Lei Zhenping snorted and ignored Ling Tian. He then looked at Justice and asked, "I wonder what you think?" Seeing that Justice remained silent, he smiled before retreating into the Lei family's camp. With his arms spread open, he shouted, You should be extremely clear about the situation of the battle already. The Ling family no longer has the ability to defend themselves, but my Lei family still has 1800 death warriors left. Death warriors who are absolutely loyal to my Lei family. The Ling family courtyard must be destroyed today. Even if you take action, how many people can you save? Even if you are the #1 expert in the world, can you fight 1,000 experts alone? Justice looked at Lei Tian with a tinge of playfulness and said casually, "You mean to say a broken bar the seat's words aren't worth anything?" While his tone was casual, his immense aura gushed out uncontrollably and everyone present could feel Justice's roaring rage. Lei Tian's eyes darted around for a moment before finally making a decision. The Ling family courtyard is going to be destroyed today. Forgive Lei Tian for not being able to obey your orders. Justice laughed from extreme anger and said coldly, "Alright then, let me take a good look." With me around today, who dares to touch the Ling family? While I cannot fight 1,000 people alone, I will definitely be able to reap the lives of everyone who takes action. So what if I am not able to kill all of you today? Does family head Lei really think that this seat is incapable of that? Lei Tian's countenance was cold but his tone was filled with a tinge of bitterness. Ling Tian is extremely despicable and is the common enemy of everyone in the world. He is the biggest plague to the world and had even boasted about killing you. Why do you have to befriend your enemy and aid him in his misdoings? Our Lei family is helping the world seek justice today to wipe out this venomous Ling Tian for the good of the world. We naturally do not need to be apprehensive about our means. As long as you do not interfere with matters today, be it my Lei family or Northern Wei's Yu family, we will be eternally grateful. Lei Tian finally chose to bring out the Yu family as well. If Lei Tian were to stop now and retreat his forces, the Ling family courtyard would definitely be able to regain their strength in a short amount of time and the dangers would be endless. The most frustrating thing was the fact that Lei Tian was initially extremely full of confidence and wanted to wipe out the Ling family with the smallest possible price. However, he never imagined he would lose 5 elders the moment the fight began. Currently, even after losing almost half of his forces, the fight was still in a stalemate and he was unable to take down the Ling family courtyard. If he was unable to wipe out the Ling family courtyard after paying such a huge price and sacrificing his son, he would no longer have the face to meet his Lei family and the rest of the world. Besides that, if he was unable to live up to his end of the deal, the Yu family would not take him seriously anymore. After finally gaining the upper hand in the battle and when victory was almost in his grasp, his son died a mysterious death and the martial order medallion owner Justice had even appeared to support the Ling family. As the family head of the Lei family, how would Lei Tian not know the strength of Justice? Even the powerful and arrogant Yu family didn't dare to let out a single sound when their #1 expert was killed by Justice. Lei Tian definitely did not dare to, nor did he have the ability to provoke Justice. Since he was unable to retreat either, he could only play the Yu family card. After all, the Yu family had already taken over half the continent and was no longer the same. He hoped that Justice would be able to consider the combined strength of both their families and take a step back. Of course, if Justice still refused to take a step back, Lei Tian would have no choice but to gather his experts to tangle with Justice while the rest of his Lei family troops finished off the remnants of the Ling family courtyard. As long as the brains of the Ling family courtyard were destroyed, so what if Justice could fight 1,000 people alone? As long as he could wipe out the Ling family courtyard, even if he had to offend Justice, it would still be worthwhile. At the very least, he would be able to take revenge for his son. Furthermore, as long as the Yu family could rule over the continent, their Lei family could borrow the strength of the Yu family to amend their ties with Beyond Heavens in future. Despicable. You are obviously the one trying to take advantage of our demise and you can actually speak with such self-righteousness? Lei Tian, there isn't a need for a despicable family like yours to remain on the continent. Ling Tian stood up straight with fire burning in her eyes as she announced, if that's the case, the Ling family will accept your battle. I, Ling Tian, as the temporary Ling family head will swear on behalf of my husband Ling Tian, regardless of the results of the battle today, The Lei family will no longer have any place in 3 months' time. 3 months from today, there won't be anyone in this world with the surname of Lei. None of them could imagine that such vicious words would actually come out from the usually gentle Ling Tian. Her words were filled with bloodlust, and everyone who carried the surname of Lei would have to face the bloodiest revenge from the Ling family from today onward. Even if the Lei family was willing to retreat right now, the Ling family would not let them at rest so easily. Ling Tian humiliating the Ling family, and Ling Tian had already ignited the frightening killing intent in Ling Tian's heart. Justice himself was also puzzled as he murmured, "This lass looks extremely wise. Why would she make such a silly mistake? I am only capable of instilling some fear into the Lei family troops, but if we were really going to fight, while no harm would fall upon me, the Ling family members who are all exhausted would surely not be able to escape." Just when Justice was about to make his stance known again to pressure the Lei family members, he was stunned for a moment as he extended his senses. He then could not help but smile as he thought, and no wonder this lass took such a hard stance. It turns out that their true master is back. This brat's movement techniques have also quickly improved, and he was almost able to hide from my ears. A clear voice, with some fatigue and boundless killing intent, sounded, "Well said. From today on, there won't be a Lei family on the continent. May the heavens and earth be my witness." Hearing this voice, all the remaining survivors of the Ling family courtyard cheered loudly in unison. All of the fatigued and injured soldiers, regardless of how severe their injuries were, as long as they could move, they stood up with their comrades supporting them. Looking at this figure, their eyes blazed with fighting spirit. Under the thick layer of protection by the Ling family troops, both Shui Qian'er and Yu Bingyan hugged each other with tears of joy. They who were already completely worn out finally collapsed onto the ground as though they were relieved of a great burden and had entered a sanctuary. The immense pressure had vanished. The fear of death had also vanished. Only the dense fatigue was left behind, and everything else would be left to that person to handle. The only thing that they had to do was to rest. This was the hope that he brought. Ling Lei, Ling Tian and the rest were all riddled with injuries and already on the brink of collapsing. But the moment that voice sounded, it was as though they had steroids injected into them, and they all got up from the ground and cheered gleefully. A black figure slowly floated down from the walls of the Ling family courtyard as though he was weightless. The scorching noon sun was blocked by this black figure, and while he was alone, his presence seemed to have brought darkness to the entire world. It was as though his very existence was superior to even the sun up in the sky. This black figure drifted a full 300 feet without even touching the ground and landed in front of Ling Tian. His brows like swords were furrowed, and his killing intent shot to the heavens. The one who had such superior movement techniques was naturally Ling Tian. Ling Tian had returned. Ling Tian's robes were still covered with dried up blood stains from the previous night's battle. He had rushed over without even changing out of his dirty robes. After entering the city, he first paid a visit to the Ling residence to check on his family members who were hiding in the secret underground chamber. He did not even have the time to comfort them before immediately leaving for the Ling family courtyard. Ling Tian's face was currently slightly pale. After experiencing a huge battle last night, he switched horses 3 times along the way just so he could rush over. For the last 10 miles of the road, his horse died from fatigue, and he had no choice but to use his supreme movement techniques to rush over at full speed. His speed was akin to a shooting star, but the exhaustion of his inner chi was also a great burden to his body. At this moment, this was perhaps the frailest moment of Ling Tian's life. Even when he fought justice in both strength and wit, he had never been so exhausted and weak. Seeing how Ling Tian and the rest who he had been worried about were all alive despite being filled with injuries, Ling Tian could finally heave a sigh of relief. But upon seeing the pathetic state of the Ling family courtyard and the corpses of his many soldiers, the rage in Ling Tian's heart began to burn again. In this lifetime, this was the first time Ling Tian suffered from such a huge loss. How could he not be frustrated? Ling Tian smirked as his gaze swept the Lei family members. At the same time, his inner chi was circulated all around his body so that he could recover his inner chi at the fastest possible time. If he wanted to kill his opponents effectively, he must first have sufficient strength. He then turned to look at Justice, You are here." His calm tone and greeting were as though he was saying hello to an old friend. While Ling Tian's expression was unchanged, the feelings of these simple words were like the mountains. Justice could naturally understand what Ling Tian was thinking. With Justice's lonesome character, if Ling Tian were to thank him profusely right now, he would probably leave immediately with a flick of his sleeves. A favor should be remembered in the heart, and it was useless to talk about it. There wasn't a need to say thanks. At their realm, it would be strange if they would still thank each other superficially. Thus, Justice did not find Ling Tian's attitude odd at all. Justice nodded his head and said calmly, "You came back pretty quickly, a broken bar. However, before you settle this matter, you have a debt that you owe me." Ling Tian smiled. "I don't think I owe you anything, do I?" Justice snorted coldly. "You are probably the only one who has the guts to feign ignorance in front of me. Do you want me to settle the debt with you right here and now?" Chapter 599, Tender Sentiments. Ling Tian chuckled and pretended as though he was enlightened. I remember now. I thought that you were already an ascended being out of the world and would not be bothered by such pointless things as a reputation. I never imagined that you would still be tied down by the pursuit of reputation. My dear brother Justice, I am truly disappointed by you. It is my fault and I apologize to you." As he said that, Ling Tian shook his head as though he was truly disappointed. Justice was angered to the point he almost exploded. "Even if I cannot be bothered about my reputation, it isn't for you to trample on it, right? Can this be considered an apology? Or are you trying to ridicule me?" Just when he was about to reply, Ling Tian continued, "Forget it. The lack of your mental state is an oversight on my part and I apologize for that. Don't you want to settle our debt? After this matter is over, I will find another 2 or 3 helpers and ensure that I will give you an explanation. I definitely won't allow you to suffer a loss. How about that?" He then waved his hands with magnanimity. Justice had the urge to beat Ling Tian up on the spot. "Little B Street Road, this daddy was here to seek an explanation from you but ended up becoming a bodyguard for your Ling family courtyard. Now that you are back, you do not even bother to thank me. Even though this daddy can't be bothered about it, you also can't ridicule me as such, right?" Justice then snorted and his voice turned chilly. "If not for the fact that you are facing both internal and external troubles together with your weakened state, this daddy would definitely teach you a lesson right now." Did you still remember that crisp slap from a while back? That wonderful feeling was something that this seat remembers until now. Hearing that, Ling Tian clenched his teeth in resentment. All his life, he had never suffered from such loss but was smacked in the ass by the old brat in front of him. While Ling Tian did not have the time right now, he swore to take his revenge one day. When the matters here were settled and his inner chi was recovered, he would call on Ling Jian, Ling Chen, and Li Zhu to join hands with him to beat Justice up into a pig head. Justice looked at Lei Zentian, who was anxiously having a discussion with his aides, and reminded Ling Tian by compressing his voice into a line, "How long more do you need?" They are going to take action soon. In truth, the two of them were talking to each other just so they could buy some time for Ling Tian to recover his strength. With Ling Tian's return, Justice would not be able to aid the Ling family courtyard any longer in consideration of his beyond heaven's status. Ling Tian rolled his eyes before shutting his eyes to feel his inner chi, which was weaving through his river-wide meridians. After a long while, he opened his eyes. "It's enough." The moment Ling Tian returned, he immediately understood what Lei Zentian was thinking. Regardless of beyond heavens or Justice himself, Lei Zentian would naturally not want to offend them if possible. While Justice had already announced his stance and had even heavily injured the second master of his Lei family, Ling Tian still did not want to offend justice. Recklessly offending the number one hidden sect in the world, or perhaps the number one expert in the world, would be akin to declaring his own death sentence. Ling Tian was also fortunate that justice was present to all the Lei family troops, thus saving the lives of Ling Tian and his other subordinates. Even Ling Tian at his peak would not have the prestige to strike fear into the hearts of the Lei family soldiers. Since that was the case, even if Ling Tian was able to wipe out all of the Lei family forces, the severely wounded Ling Tian and the others would definitely perish in battle. That was why Ling Tian chose to start a conversation with Justice the moment he arrived. He knew that as long as he was talking to Justice, Ling Tian would not dare to risk angering Justice by interrupting their conversation. The time spent talking to Justice was also the best opportunity for Ling Tian to recover his inner chi. Ling Tian's guess was truly extremely accurate. During the time where he was talking to Justice, Ling Tian glanced at him a few times with impatience and viciousness, but did not dare to make a single sound or order an attack. Ling Chen looked at Ling Tian sweetly with tears filling up her eyes. When she was in a state of complete hopelessness, her most beloved man appeared in front of her. It was just like many years back when a warm pair of hands appeared in the life of a hopeless little girl. At this moment, Ling Chen felt a boundless happiness and her nose began to turn sour. If she wasn't in front of everyone, she would have definitely burst out into tears. Ling Tian smiled and stretched out his arms to pull the petite figure into his embrace. With tenderness in his eyes, he asked gently, "Does it hurt?" Ling Chen leaned in his warm embrace as though she was a bullied child who was in her parents' embrace. Just when she was about to start wailing, she remembered that she was in a public place with everyone staring at them. She suppressed her emotions, but her body could not help but tremble as tears flowed down her cheeks, and she said with a shaky voice, "Young nobly broken bar, I thought that I wouldn't be able to see you again in this lifetime of many a broken bar." Ling Tian sent out a warm inner chi through his hand, which was placed on her waist, and dotingly said, "Silly lass, why wouldn't you be able to see me again? You still have to accompany me until our hair turns gray. Be good, don't cry." Ling Chen felt a wave of warmth spread throughout her meridians, and her previously severe internal injuries were immediately much better. The pain in her chest had also disappeared. Hearing Ling Tian's gentle voice, she nodded her head obediently before squirming in his embrace. A broken bar. Ling Tian adjusted the condition of Ling Chen's body silently, and he glanced at the walls of the Ling family courtyard intentionally. The corners of his lips were then curved up in a smirk, and he stepped forward with a loud roar. "Who is Ling Tian? Get out here for me!" The troops of the Lei family already couldn't stand the sight of the brat in front of them, behaving intimately with a woman the moment he appeared, and actually behaving in such a rude manner now. They were immediately incensed, and a burly man scolded, "Little B Street Road, what bullshit are you, a broken bar?" Before he could even finish, Ling Tian smiled and a silver light appeared suddenly without him even making a move. The silver light disappeared in a flash, and the burly man cried out in agony before collapsing onto the ground with blood flowing down from his eyes. After rolling on the ground a few times, he then remained motionless and his breathing stopped. He'd a broken bar. Of the few thousand people present, only Justice and Ling Tian could see the silver flashing light. The rest were completely clueless and only saw how the burly man collapsed onto the floor and died without any reason. Such a frightening and formless killing method made everyone gasp in shock. "Ling Tian, you were actually able to make it back on time?" Ling Tian's eyes narrowed as he looked at Ling Tian. He then burst out laughing viciously. "So what if you can return on time? Does the Ling family courtyard still have the strength to fight against my Lei family army? Ha ha, did you rush back to your death? I truly welcome you, so I can wipe all of you out together. Since the martial order medallion owner is also here to settle scores with you, this untalented Ling Tian is willing to settle scores on his behalf." Ling Tian was a famed figure in the continent, and despite facing the overbearing Ling Tian, he was still able to respond with a smile. At the same time, he tried to sow discord between Ling Tian and Justice with his words. After all, Justice was far too frightening. Even though Ling Tian's strength wasn't to be underestimated, it was still within Ling Tian's expectations. Of course, this was only what he thought. Ling Tian chuckled in response. The sky isn't dark yet, but family head Lei is already dreaming. Lei Tian grinned malevolently. It should be extremely clear just who is dreaming. What does young noble Ling think? Ling Tian laughed loudly. Right at this moment, the sound of galloping horses could be heard from all directions, and they were the last-minute reinforcements that Ling Tian had summoned. The sounds of the galloping horses were extremely disorganized, and they obviously did not belong to the same commander. However, there were definitely plenty troops. A mocking smile could be seen on Ling Tian's face. I think family head Lei should be extremely clear about who is dreaming, right? Lei Tian's eyes widened in anger as he said hatefully. Ling Tian, it is too early for you to be gloating. Attack! His final word was a command to his Lei family warriors. Ling Tian smiled cruelly. While family head Lei can't wait to kill me, I am an extremely benevolent person who will repay enmity with benevolence. Regardless of the cost, I will have to keep family head Lei's life here. Family head Lei Tian, Old Beast Street Road. Without my command, you won't be allowed to die even if you want to. As Ling Tian said that, he waved his hand and two black figures wove into the formation of the Lei family warriors like two ferocious beasts pouncing into a herd of sheep. A series of miserable groans sounded, and in just a few short moments, more than 70 lives were gone. A portion of them had a red spot on their neck as they rolled on the ground with whatever remaining life they had. A portion of them had their bodies dismembered with their body parts scattering all around. Finally, the rest of them were frozen into ice sculptures with their body collapsing onto the ground lifelessly. Ling Tian and Li Zhu had returned right on time. A short while after Ling Tian returned to the courtyard, the two of them had also arrived at the courtyard. Under Ling Tian's orders, they hid and adjusted their energy while waiting for an opportunity. Lei Tian clenched his teeth and ignored the miserable groans behind him and charged at Ling Tian with his two remaining elders. As long as he could kill Ling Tian, the objective of his mission would be accomplished. At the same time, he did not forget to roar, I hope that sir will be able to maintain your neutral stance and not help any side. Lei Tian will always remember your favor. In his heart, the most dangerous person was still Justice. But since Justice did not seem like he wanted to take action, Lei Tian would naturally not provoke him. Justice snorted with a tinge of helplessness. This daddy here does not have the energy to interfere in that brat's affairs. With his SHD character, this daddy cannot be bothered. However, Justice could not be completely idle either, as Ling Tian's voice sounded in his ears. May older brother help me to look after my injured brothers. I know that older brother's medical skills are also unmatched in the world. Ling Tian then charged out before shouting out again, I have good wine. I will give older brother a jug after matters here are settled. Justice did not know whether to laugh or cry. With just the price of some wine you want the #1 expert in the world to be your bodyguard. Isn't the worth of the #1 expert far too low? However, he also could not do anything about it. After all, he couldn't possibly settle his score with Ling Tian at this moment, right? Since Ling Tian called him a older brother at the very least, his attitude could be considered to be barely passable. Justice sighed with depression and unsheathed his sword. Using the tip of his sword to carve out a line along the ground, he ordered coldly, Death to those who cross the line.